ahead and get started. Chad, let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your 8-minute timer for your introduction. You have 8 minutes for your introduction, starting now.
All right, so the question, does science prove God? Well, first we got to investigate what are the domains of science. And I think given the nature of the conversation we're having, I think it's pertinent that we exclude things like social sciences, computer sciences. They're not relevant to this conversation. So what are we left with in the most concrete sense? There's chemistry, that's how atoms bond. Biology is how these molecular structures organize. Perhaps even neuroscience as to how biology gives rise to cognition. But in each one of these cases, the system being described and tested is composed of matter, energy, and information operating within space-time. So this really is the proper domain of physics. Therefore, we can simply conclude that every higher science is contingent on and constrained by the laws of physics. It's also important, perhaps, I think, to note that physics ultimately converges to mathematics at its base. But since this discussion is in the lens of provable propositions, I assume we'll only speak of empirical domains of science. And in that case, physics to be particular. Also, very important to understand the scope of this conversation is that we should maintain our propositions to the domain of what has testable, provable, repeatable, even to a minor degree. So things and propositions and models such as many worlds, pilot wave theory, superdeterminism, retrocausality, virtual particle string theory, loop quantum gravity, holographic universe, the extra dimensions, grand unification models, things like this, I think we ought to just not really discuss in a meaningful way or invoke in this conversation, because they are not within the domain of empirical science. They're purely within the domain of theoretical science for pretty much all of those cases. So then what does the investigation of the empirical sciences tell us about the natural world and tell us about God? And naturally, given the audience here and the audience you guys are cultivating, I expect you to ask immediately, what do you mean by God? Wouldn't it be pertinent to profile the thing that you're looking for in order to prove that it exists? Well, therein is a necessary lens that we have already constrained ourselves to, and that being the principle of sufficient reason. Science, without the principle of sufficient reason, falls into absolute nonsense, and you can't make any inference about the future. Explanations of any laws don't exist, and any assertion could just be just because it is. So to not acknowledge that the principle of sufficient reason grounds science is to be non-scientific. So since we're speaking about this, we have already invoked and grounded the principle of sufficient reason. And given that we understand what that is, we can understand that in lieu of that, we can understand God's necessary properties and the primary property of God, and that being that God is non-contingent. And the reason we can deduce this is because an infinite regression of contingent causes is impossible. I can provide a proof for this, but in the introduction, I'm not going to delineate on that particularly. But when to speak of God in this conversation with me is immediately to speak of that which is non-contingent, necessary, non-causal, non-emergent. Any of these synonyms will suffice for the ontological principle that I'm alluding to. And so then the question becomes, well, God equals non-causal, non-contingent, doesn't come from anywhere, necessary. So then we reflect on physics and ask ourselves, is there any propositions in which this set of properties is invoked? And we come to find out that in every single model in physics, without failure, this set of properties is necessarily invoked. It's just invoked without being called God. It's merely invoked as a field, as some quantum state of affairs that from which everything emerges. In the most true sense, in the analytics, in the practice of this, it would be called at least Hilbert spaces, as being the domain within which every other equation exists, and the entire playground wherein which Higgs, Maxwell, and Dirac laws, all of these functions emerge inside of. And so when I'm speaking about God and trying to provide a proof for this, it is very important to understand that that is what we're proving, and that's what we're aiming at. We're not aiming at trying to prove or argue for a religion, an anthropomorphized interpretation of God. We're not arguing for God's omnibenevolence or that he has some will for you. These are all derivative properties, but the primary P1 of God ontologically is such that God is non-causal. So to invoke that P1 is to invoke the fundamental asymmetric property that God is given. And if you are to say that no, God necessarily does not have this property, God could be contingent, well, then you would be equivocating completely, because there's an absolute necessary symmetry break of contingency and non-contingency. And that which is non-contingent, non-causal, etc., is the domain of God. And so you cannot equivocate on that term and start to replace God with being somehow contingent, causal, or having something preceding it, because at that point in time, you're committing a philosophical, a major philosophical problem, which is called equivocation. And so I can offer in this later part of this conversation, I'm sure we'll eventually get to it, a proof for this, syllogisms or a logical deductive proof. But insofar as my introduction, I think that'll suffice. I don't have anything else I'd like to introduce right now, but I just would like to remind Dr. Blitz about the scope of the conversation that I have outlined for us, and to try to remain within that scope of conversation when we are discussing physics. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction. Dr. Blitz, I have you on the screen now. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll timer now.
Yeah, so the prompt we agreed upon is, does science prove God? And unfortunately for Chad, he really shouldn't have agreed to that prompt, because there's a fairly straightforward deductive argument showing it's false. So I'm just going to lay out the premises. We can talk about the premises afterwards, but the premises and the conclusions go something like this. Premise 1. If science proves the truth of any proposition, it does so by proving the falsity of the negation of that proposition. Premise 2. If science proves the falsity of any proposition, it does so by observing the failure of some necessary, empirically observable implication of that proposition. The conclusion that follows from these two premises via the hypothetical syllogism is, if science proves the truth of the proposition, quote, God is real, then it does so by observing the failure of some necessary, empirically observable implication of the proposition God is not real. Premise 3. If there are no empirically observable implications of the proposition, quote, God is not real, then there are no possible observations that contradict a necessary, empirically observable implication of the proposition God is not real. Premise 4, there are no necessary, empirically observable implications of the proposition God is not real. The conclusion that we draw from premise 3 and premise 4 via modus ponens is, there are no observations that contradict a necessary, empirically observable implication of the proposition God is not real. And the conclusion then, following from conclusion 1 and conclusion 2 via modus tollens, is that science does not prove the truth of the proposition God is real. Now, I've written this out. If you guys want to go back and rewatch it, you can check. It's fairly straightforward to check that this is a valid argument. I've laid out what all of the inference rules that are required, so all we have to do is check that each premise is true. Now, the first two premises are pretty unobjectionable. They're basically just describing how science is in the business of proving hypotheses wrong and providing evidence that hypotheses are true. But evidence and proof are different things, and no amount of scientific evidence ever gets you to proof that a hypothesis is true, right? That's like kind of fundamental feature of science. The third premise, it sounded super technical. It is just a technical detail that I don't think is objectionable. We could definitely talk about it if we need to, but all it's saying is that if there are no possible things to contradict, then you can't contradict any of them. There's nothing sneaky in there. The fourth premise is the thing that I suspect will get pushback. And just so you remember, the premise was there are no necessary empirically observable implications of the proposition God is not real. Now, keep in mind, we're examining the bare proposition God is not real, not God is not real and naturalism is true, or God is not real and the universe came from nothing. We're not attaching any auxiliary premise to the proposition here. So there's no way to make a connection to some way the universe should be that we could observe. Put another way, the proposition, quote, God is not real is a metaphysical one, and connecting a metaphysical claim to a claim about observations or experiments requires a bridge principle of some kind. And demonstrating the falsity of the conjunction, quote, God is not real, and whatever bridge principle you choose merely shows that either God is real or the bridge principle is false. So a failure to observe some implication of this conjunction does not falsify the statement God is not real. Now, perhaps my opponent, and I wrote this before I heard what his definition is, so I'm going to read it anyway, and then I'll connect back to what he said. Now, perhaps my opponent in his opening will smuggle in a bridge principle in his definition of God, like God is whatever created the Milky Way, or God is whatever created consciousness. The implied bridge principle here is that if there is no God, then there is no Milky Way, or there is no consciousness. And you can do that if you want, but that's merely a definitional game. I could just as easily define God as a dude on top of Mount Olympus, and then falsify that entity, right? So instead, we should work within the framework of God that my opposition actually believes in. So in his own words, I want to play something really quick. Let me just share my screen.
Pausing the timer while you get that pulled up. Once you get that shared, we'll resume it.
Sure. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Oops. The personal belief. I have the personal belief that God can be accessed and that he wants a relationship with you. So I believe in a theistic world. I do believe that. So because as I understand it, deism.
It interacts directly with the ostensibly it interacts directly with the not God set.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Now, can I prove this? No, I just believe it.
Okay.
So let me stop sharing my screen. So to be clear, he explicitly said that he can't prove it. So if he came on here claiming that he would be able to prove that science proves God, then he shouldn't have said that last week. Of course, he's going to try to prove something that he doesn't believe in as his God. Rather, he's going to try to prove something that's super, super vague, and we can talk about that later. I'm sure we will. But in that debate that I just showed you a clip from, he talks about God's will, he talks about God's mind, and more. And those are the words of someone who is a theist, someone who at least thinks that God is a disembodied mind that has a will and it can act on it, and it's perhaps the creator or sustainer or grounder of physical reality. So given such a definition, the actual thing he believes in, it's easy to see that premise 4 has to be true. Physical reality being created, sustained, or grounded by a disembodied mind is empirically indistinguishable from, say, a physical being grounded by mathematical, from, say, a physical universe being grounded by mathematical objects, say in mathematical monism, or physical reality being self-grounding. That is, questions about creation by something outside of physical reality, whether a mind or otherwise, is not even in principle observable empirically. And similar statements can be made about how the universe is sustained or grounded. These are metaphysical questions, and empirical observations can only distinguish between physical explanations. Now, perhaps my opponent would then go on to try to provide philosophical, i.e. non-empirical arguments to dispose of those alternatives, leaving only God as a possible explanation. And maybe he would be successful, but then it would not be science that proves God exists, but science together with some other kind of philosophical reasoning that proves God exists. And that means that he would be implicitly agreeing with my side of the debate, that science does not prove God exists. Now, his actual definition that he gave just 5 minutes ago in his actual opening is that God is whatever is non-causal. But in this definition, there's not even a bridge principle that was even implicitly smuggled in. There's no bridge at all. This is merely a metaphysical claim that is essentially defining God into existence, similarly as saying God is whatever creates consciousness, or God is whatever is at the top of Mount Olympus. So this definition fails in much the same way as I mentioned earlier. So I suppose I'll conclude by saying this. Given all of that, I'm pretty sure I've established that the prompt, as agreed upon, lands squarely on my side. Now, I'm sure this is probably not where my interlocutor actually wants to take the debate. I'm sure he'd rather talk about fine-tuning or the regularity of nature or some other such thing. And I'm happy to talk about that. I love talking about science, philosophy, and their intersection. But I just want to make it clear to the audience that the prompt was, does science prove God? that question has already been answered, and the answer is no. The rest of the debate, it's just fluff.
You have a minute left. Are you conceding the rest of your time?
That's all I got.
Perfect. All right, guys. So let's have a good, clean debate here. Let's try to avoid the low blows. Remember, once again, you guys are sharing time here. You'll have an hour. Any super chats, $5. We'll get a question to the guests. $2 will get displayed on the screen. And then with that being said, let's go ahead. Every dollar gets a minute added up to 60 minutes. But let's have a good, clean debate here. And mega bloodbath engaged. Let me know when you guys are ready, and I'll start the timer.
I'm good.
Let's get it.
Cool. You guys have 1 hour starting now.
All right. So first and foremost, interesting that you watched the previous debate we did.
Why wouldn't
Shouts
I?
out to you for that. I don't know. But secondly, that clip that you played, very important to understand that was my belief. I said completely out of context that was taken. It was in the frame of reference of what do I believe, not what I can prove. I believe this. I believe that God can have a personal relationship with you, and that's on faith. And so far as proving God's necessity, that we can do. Now, another very sneaky thing you did, accusing me of doing some sneaky stuff, is saying you can define God as that which is on top of Mount Olympus. That would be a contingent thing. Mount Olympus is relational, it's contingent, it's emergent. And so you can't. That would be called equivocation in the most core sense. Because to deny that God is defining God as a contingent entity eliminates the explanatory and ontological function given to this meaning. And when, again, you speak of God, there's a true symmetry break, that there is contingent causal things, and then there's non-contingent non-causal. God is the domain of that which is non-contingent and non-causal. That is the ontology of this word, going long before any person conjectured the scientific method. An easy proof for this is find yourself in an amphitheater in 1,000 years ago, prior, long before, or even take it back 1,500 years, long before the emergence of the scientific method. If you were to take the largest denomination of religion, the Abrahamic school of thought, and combine them all into an amphitheater, Sunni, Shia, Muslims, Jews, Baptist, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, you name it. Obviously, those denominations didn't exist then, but let's just suppose this. And they're all present in this amphitheater. They would be at each other's neck all day about the clothes they wear, the way in which they live their life, what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do, how they're allowed to marry, etc., etc. They don't agree on much of any of these principles, to be quite frank. However, if you, Dr. Blitz, found yourself in the center of this amphitheater and you asked a simple question, does God come from anywhere? Every single head in that amphitheater would turn towards you and in unison would tell you, no, God necessarily doesn't come from anywhere, because when you invoke God, that is the first property that you are invoking. It's very important to understand that. So are you following me insofar as the statement you made in your introduction that God could be defined as that which is on top of Mount Olympus is a philosophical equivocation that renders the term God ontologically useless?
So I'm just going to let you finish. You've said a lot of things that I'm going to address, so go ahead.
That's it. That was my question to you.
Okay. So first thing, you said that I was being sneaky by taking it out of context. So I explicitly said in my opening that this is what you believe, and I included the part where you said that this is what you believe. However, I do have receipts from that debate where before the question and answer session, when you were talking with Peterson, you talked about God's mind, God's will, God's benevolence. You talked about these things, not just in the context of what you believe, but in the conversation. But that's perhaps neither here nor there. Now, you brought up this, you made this very strange statement that I can't define God as a thing on top of a mountain because it's I mean, you said it eliminates ontological function given to the meaning. I have no idea what that means. But the point is we all have definitions of words, right? If you ask the ancient Greeks 2,500 years ago or 3,000 years ago, they would say, yeah, God is a guy on top of a mountain, right? And if you asked the ancient Hebrews 2,300 years ago, they would say that, yeah, God is the caller of storms. God lives in a throne in heaven. God has a penis and a wife, right? That was the belief of the ancient Hebrews, maybe 2,500 years ago, maybe not 2,300 years ago. That was the belief of the ancient Hebrews. And if you believed, and if you talked to the ancient Christians 1,900 years ago, they would have a similar view. They wouldn't think that he has a wife. They probably wouldn't think that he has a penis. They would think that he's like just a ghost. But he lives in heaven, and he's actually there. He's not just some like amorphous, undefined thing, right? So if we're going based off of historical definitions, you have to tell me which historical definition are we using? Are we using the medieval definition that you're using, which is like a non-entity and has no properties and is consistent with atheism? I suspect we probably shouldn't do that, if only because, look, that's not what you believe. That's not what most Christians believe. That's not what most people in the history of humanity have ever believed about God. Why are we talking about some philosophically neutered version of God when that's not even what you believe? Can I
interrupt you here so we don't kind of scurry off?
Yeah, sure.
And the example you provided of the Hebrews, the Christians, was that and the third. Let's assume you go back 2,500 years and you ask a Hebrew, does God come from anywhere? Even though they assume he had perhaps according to you has a penis and a wife and this, that, and the third. If you were to ask them, does God come from anywhere? What answer would they give you?
I think that they would say, I don't know.
No, they would say not I don't know. They would correctly invoke necessarily that God does not come from anywhere.
No, I don't think they would. I mean, if you ask the ancient Greeks 3,000 years ago, they would say, yeah, Zeus comes from Uranus, or Zeus comes from Kronos' head, right? Uranus came from the primordial water. Like they would have answers.
And where does the primordial water come from?
They would say, I don't know. Like this
No,
notion
they
of
would say
necessity
it
and contingency
doesn't.
is like it's like European medieval philosophical jargon. Like this is not a thing that they were talking about 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
No, it absolutely is. It's well outlined in the Zohar and the property of Ein
When was the
Sof.
Zohar written?
I think it was 1,600 years ago. It was formally contextualized. It's
okay. So
similar.
the Zohar was published in medieval Europe.
Yeah. So the thing about this, though, is you must remember, at least to my knowledge about the Zohar, I'm not absolutely the historian on this, is much like it was an oral tradition. And many of these principles were held and transferred from rabbi to rabbi or philosopher within their respective domain. And it was at some point contextualized into this document. But to pretend that the origin of this idea is when it was written is to be just intentionally, like, that's dishonest.
I mean, look,
and it is the case when we are talking about the Abrahamic school of thought. Right. I'm not invoking. So you understand who you're talking to, right? I'm not talking about Zeus. I don't believe in Zeus.
Yeah, you're not talking about any god. You're talking about like an amorphous, philosophically.
I am talking about the Abrahamic school of thought.
The Abrahamic school of thought is not God equals a non-causal, non-contingent thing. That's not the Abrahamic school of thought.
Absolutely it is. It absolutely is, without a grain of a doubt. Without even like a slight shadow of a doubt.
Maybe post-medieval period.
No, not post-medieval period. No. This is without a shadow of a doubt the absolutely necessary property of God in the Old Testament. And you saying I don't know to this or pretending to be ignorant to this is like, that's just shady.
Hey, and let's try and do our best to allow each other to talk a little bit, not overtalk the other.
That's my bad. I have a tendency to do that. I apologize, Chad.
Can I prove that? Yeah, can I prove that? It's like, for example, it's directly implied in Genesis 1. God created the heavens and the earth, meaning that the first act of creation came from him. And then when you would ask, well, where did God come from? Nowhere. He did not emerge. It's
but that's not what it
necessarily the case that he's non-causal, non-contingent. That's the
That's not what it
direct
says.
implication.
That's not what it says. That's just not in the book at all. That's why I said that the ancient Hebrews
Okay,
would
let me get this
absolutely.
straight. Let me get
I'm
this
sorry.
straight.
That's why I said the
What are
ancient
you
Hebrews
looking
would
for?
say. That's why I said the ancient Hebrews said would almost certainly say, I don't know, because it doesn't say it in the book.
No. They
Right?
don't say I don't know. That's
Okay.
ridiculous. That
Okay.
you think that they would say
Incredulity
I
is not
don't
an
know
argument.
to this proposition.
It's not in the book. You even had to
Oh,
say that
okay.
it
What are
directly
you
implies it,
looking
but it doesn't
for?
say it.
What are you
Well,
looking for? Are
so
you
I'm
looking for? Let me pose a question to
Yeah,
you
sure.
before we start interrupting. Are you unironically actually looking for the statement in the Bible that God is non-contingent, non-causal? Is that the proof you're looking for?
Well, if it said something like God has always been, or God was not created but has only ever been the creator. If it said something like that, then maybe you'd have a point.
Can I?
That's just not what it says.
Let me. I'm not super well versed in scripture, but if you allow me a second, I can absolutely, without a grain of a doubt, ground that in scripture. It points many times that God
In
is
Genesis?
the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega, that God is
Oh.
before anything was. There's many things about this in scripture that directly allude to this. And then furthermore, if you're an honest actor and you simply read the first 3 lines of Genesis and then pose the natural question, God created all these things, then where did God come from? The absolutely natural answer is not I don't know, but that when you speak of God, to not equivocate God with everything else that is contingent, causal, created, the way in which you do not equivocate on this term and make it ontologically useless is that you say there's a necessary symmetry break between all things that are created, all things that are contingent and causal, and that which is non-contingent and non-causal.
You're reading
That
a lot
is-
into the first 3 sentences of Genesis, my guy. I mean, look,
I'm
like if
not.
it doesn't say any of that. They didn't have an understanding of that philosophy 2,500 years ago. The idea of like necessity and contingency, that like those notions were Greek philosophical notions that they didn't have access to. This was not part of the ancient Hebrew philosophy. By the way, I do find it really funny that you quoted the New Testament for statements like he's the beginning, the end, the Alpha, the Omega, because by the time the New Testament was written, they were already getting an influx from Greek philosophy, right? That's when the shift started happening at the end of late antiquity, the beginning of the medieval ages, is precisely when this shift happens away from this from a very personal anthropomorphized God to a much more abstract God. And the shift to the even more abstract, because again, by the year 300, 400 or so, they were still talking about a personal divine being, right? It was a personal divine being that always was and always would be, but a personal divine being nonetheless. This shift to God is merely whatever is non-causal and non-contingent. That's like maybe Aquinas. Maybe that even goes like as recent as like the 1700s. Like that's much more recent. So I mean, if you want to define God into existence, like it seems like that that's all you're doing. It doesn't seem like you're actually using any science to do anything, to prove anything. So I don't know, man.
Okay, so let me draw an analogy to you, kind of what I see what you're trying to do, right? Is first of all, you're not talking to me. I've outlined exactly what I mean by God. You're talking to everyone else in antiquity that you'd rather build up a straw man of me of. Number one. Number two, I could do the exact same thing to you. I could say to you, well, in physics, for example, they talk about atoms. But guess what? You know, when they say the word atom, they didn't really mean that back then. So what you mean by atom isn't really what's meant at all, because 2,000 years ago, the word atom is not the set of properties we attribute to an atom today. It's not what an atom is. It's clearly divisible and mereological, but that's not the properties given to an atom back then. It was this indivisible thing that was the foundation of everything. Do you think that would be an honest way to proceed forward in a conversation, is for me to then start invoking the way in which this word was used 2,000 years ago, when we clearly understand what we mean by it today? Is that
Chad,
an honest way?
you invoked what people thought 1,500 years ago. That's why I jumped on that. So
because
don't
they
bring this
did.
up like I
They
invoke.
literally did.
I mean,
1,500 years ago, even according to you and
1,500
me.
years ago.
Yeah,
We
that's
can check the
true.
source, but I don't think 1,500 years ago they were defining God as
let me
a
ask you a question.
non-causal.
When
I'm
did,
sorry,
when
what
did
happened
the
to the
Nicene
non-interrupting
Council
part?
occur? Sure, I'll shut up. My bad.
So my understanding is that 1,500 years ago, which was after the Nicene Council,
Yeah,
they did not
it's all grounded.
They did not define God as anything that's non-causal and non-contingent. That wasn't in the Nicene Creed. I'm sorry, it just wasn't.
Are
Look,
you serious?
the reason why we have to talk about definitions, because you're going to try to it's already happening here. You're trying to defend a God that is just defined into existence. On the other hand, that's not what you believe. It's not what basically everybody in the world believes. It's not what basically anybody in the history of the world has believed. So why should we use that definition of God when the way that words get their meanings is the way that people use them? And that's just not how anybody uses the word. Like, if you want to define God into existence, then I'm equally well justified as defining God into non-existence.
Okay, all right. So you're saying that's not the way anyone uses the word today. All right. Well, how about
By majority, of course, there are people who will who are on the fringe. Sure.
Gotcha. So you're speaking to somebody who is of the Abrahamic school of thought. Not speaking to a Hindu. You're not speaking to some ridiculous person who I don't know, whatever. You're speaking to me. And so within my frame of reference, which is the Abrahamic school of thought, if we were to rerun that analogy of the amphitheater and you found yourself today in 2025 with a megaphone and you asked the question to the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians and all their walks and denominations, does God come from anywhere? What would they tell you?
They would probably say no. They would probably say that no.
Not
God
probably. They would definitively. Even the most lay and uneducated Christian, Jew, or Muslim would absolutely be aware of the fact that when you speak of God, you can go to Afghanistan and speak to a barefoot Bedouin Muslim who's illiterate. You could ask him, "Hey, Mr. Muslim, is God does he come from anywhere?" He would tell you no. Not probably no. Definitively no.
We can even
Do
absolutely
you grant this?
We could absolutely grant that.
Yeah.
However, the God that they believe in is also a mind that is the creator, sustainer, and/or foundation of the world. That God is also all-knowing, all-powerful. There's a lot of extra stuff tacked on there.
And so these are derivative properties. So
how are you going to
how
derive
this
them?
is structured?
Hold on. I'm sorry.
I can go.
Okay, you'll have to derive them.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to be clear,
in the
just so we
sense
don't-
of how you
just so we don't
speak
get-
about a syllogism.
Just so we sure. Just so we're clear, the topic is that we can use science to prove this, right?
As I tried to outline to you, that science invokes this, and by directly invoking this property, it is the proof of this.
I'm
there
sorry.
are a few super chats to pull this back on topic. I'm just going to go through those real quick. We did get some time added on for those, obviously. The first one is from Cody H. He's asking, Chad, what happened to the physics galloping? You are dodging the point of the debate. Thank you so much. Nobody on fire is saying, Chad, unsure how biblical implications of the idea of God, for there's your point of God being proven by science. Austin Sims, he talked about nothing but physics with the non-physicist, but brought a physicist on to debate hermeneutics in a debate. Does science prove God? Feel free to address any of those if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll shut up.
So I have a question. So is your claim roughly, well, look, science requires the PSR in order to make useful inferences, and the PSR implies the truth of the PSR implies the existence of God, or something along those lines?
It's not immediately incorrect, but there's a couple of other very important points to address with that. 1 second. I kind of actually wrote it down when I was driving back. If I can find my phone here.
Just to be clear, the reason why I ask is because supposing that any kind of link to the PSR is necessary for your argument, then that just means that the prompt fails. Science doesn't prove it. It requires some extra additional philosophical baggage or philosophical argumentation.
No. I'm saying to you that I'll outline it for you.
I'm sorry.
Sure, of course.
I was in the middle of the sentence. Yeah. Go ahead.
My bad. Yeah. When it comes to not the syllogism, but I'll run it down for you, right? Science grants PSR, and without PSR, science is useless. cannot be used to infer or predict anything, and effectively becomes defunct. Do you agree with that?
No, not at all.
So you think that
Well, are
without
you
the
using the
principle of
strong or the weak
sufficient
form?
reason,
Are you using the weak or strong version of the PSR?
strong. I don't believe in this weak sauce imagination. I'm invoking the
then yeah,
strong version
no, I
of the principle of
definitely
sufficient
disagree.
reason. Okay, so you believe that science can
Why don't you
exist
just ask me
with-
what I believe rather than straw manning my position?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. You believe that science
Asking me
can
what I believe doesn't
function
start with you believe
without the
that.
principle of sufficient reason.
Yeah, so I think that science,
Oh.
all science requires is a weaker version of the principle of sufficient reason, namely that all physical things require some sort of explanation. That's all that science needs,
Well,
right?
Yeah, there's some weak version of this. What is this? I can provide you a proof where using the square. Let me see. I have it here. It's a paper published by somebody. It talks about how it uses a very interesting logical proof. The semiotic square leads to semantic collapse. Well, the semiotic square addresses weak and strong atheism, weak and strong agnosticism, and it very clearly outlines how this and literally leads to a semantic collapse.
Sorry,
So
we're
I
talking
don't
about the
really-
PSR. I don't see what this has to do with weak or strong agnosticism or atheism.
Yeah, let me just look up what weak.
So the PSR is for every fact F, there must be a sufficient reason why F is the case. Do we agree on that definition?
Yeah, isn't that the strong definition of PSR though?
That's like the most basic definition. It's not like the most formal version, but yeah, that's roughly the strong version.
Yeah, it is.
So-
to my knowledge, that's what you would
Okay,
call it.
so let me give you a strange, bizarre case. You accept the PSR is true, yes?
Yeah, necessarily.
Okay, what is the sufficient reason for why the PSR is true?
Well, the PSR is. I understand that's a hilariously circular question.
Questions aren't
But-
circular, my guy.
Yeah. We're not asking to ground the PSR. The question is,
Then the PSR is false.
In the
That's
scope,
false.
are we
right?
talking about the scope of science?
So
Are we operating this
the
conversation
PSR
in the lens of science?
That's why I asked you if you were referring to the weak or the strong PSR. Now, the PSR, as stated, as you said, is required by science, says for every fact F, not just for every physical fact F, because I would probably agree that every physical fact requires an explanation, although we could talk about quantum stuff, but we don't have to do that.
You literally agree with the PSR. But
No,
you're
the
just
PSR
like
is for
muddying
every
the
fact
water.
F. I'm sorry, this is not a semantic disagreement. I can agree that every physical fact requires an explanation. That does not mean that every fact requires an explanation.
So, in the lens of science, is the PSR granted?
In the form where the statement is for every fact F, there must be a sufficient reason why F is the case? No, absolutely not. It's not required. Some people might believe it, but it's not required.
To operate within the lens of science, do you invoke, according to you, either the weak or the strong form of PSR?
I think the weak form is not what I would usually want to call it. So I would say that you invoke a version, or you invoke a weaker version of the PSR, which is for every physical fact F. There must be sufficient reason why F is the case.
Can you answer my question? In
I
the
am.
lens of science,
I literally just
are
did.
you
I don't know how else to explain
necessarily
it to you.
invoking? Yes. Well, perhaps don't elaborate so explicitly on it. We've heard the elaboration. Can we get the direct answer so we can proceed within the lens?
Wait, if you
of
know what the answer
science,
is, then why do you need to ask it again?
So the answer is yes. Within the lens of
It's
science,
not the
we invoke-
PSR, no.
Chad,
It's not.
Sure. So in science, we're necessarily invoking the weak or the strong version of the PSR.
I could look up the strict definition of the weak PSR to make sure it agrees with the one I have. But why not just use the version of the PSR that I've given?
Wonderful. So the answer is yes. To practice science is to invoke the PSR.
No, it's not the PSR. The PSR, as stated, that you agreed is the definition of the PSR. It does not require that. No.
Okay, so I mean, am I am I crazy here? The audience, are you following me here? I'm asking you an incredibly straightforward. However it is that you want to define your own unique version of the PSR to perceive and talk about science, are you necessarily invoking that version of the PSR?
Let's call it the B PSR. Blitz's PSR. Then yeah, sure, you're invoking the B PSR.
Okay. What is okay, because here's the thing, right? Guy accuses me of defining things into existence. Then on the first question proceeds to say, I'm going to have my own unique definition of the PSR. Make sense.
So Chad,
please.
don't strawman me. I'm
That's
telling
what
you
you
that
just did, man.
It's not. I'm telling you that the thing I think is required for science is not the PSR. I'm not redefining the PSR. I'm telling you that there's a different principle that science requires.
And so would that
principle.
not literally be your unique definition?
No, it's literally not. It's a different thing.
So why call it
name.
the Blitz PSR if it's not your unique definition?
Do you want me to change the name? I can change the name if you want.
I'm asking you a straight up question. Like, it's not about
Because it was
the
the
name
first
of
thing I
it.
thought of.
It's the properties that it contains.
So it is a weaker version of the standard PSR. And we could weaken it even further.
Can you
please? Contingent physical facts require an explanation.
Confused by this.
I can
you
understand.
Please elucidate to me the symmetry break between the weak and the strong version of the PSR?
The weak PSR is not what I'm requiring. The weak PSR is for all contingent truths P. It is possible that P has an explanation. That is the weak PSR, and that's not what I'm requiring.
Okay, question again. Can you please elucidate to me the symmetry break between the weak and the strong PSR? Ergo, what I'm asking you is there is a symmetry break between a rectangle and a square. Well-defined symmetry break.
Yeah,
and if that symmetry break is violated, you can understand which category it's in. So
I'm not talking about the weak PSR.
So that I could understand what it is you even mean by the words you're saying, can you please elucidate to me the symmetry break between the weak and the strong PSR?
Yes, I think that propositions being non-physical entities don't necessarily require explanation. I think that it's possible that mathematical objects being non-physical don't necessarily require explanation. These would be facts that do not require explanation. I think it's possible that there are non-physical things that don't require explanation. And so that's why. And science doesn't care about that. If science, whether or not there are non-physical things that don't require explanation, it's irrelevant for the scientific method. The scientific method is only concerned with talking about explanations or finding explanations for physical things anyway. So all you need for science is that physical things require explanation, if they're contingent, that is.
And real fast, the audience, and I'm sure Blitz and myself hear it too, but Chad, could you please lower your microphone volume about 20% or back up? Kurt is asking, is Chad's proof deductive, inductive, or abductive?
What do you come up with debate someone's physics? Sorry, I didn't get that question. I can't read it. What, is he asking me something? Is Chad's proof deductive, inductive, or abductive? It's tough to qualify that right now. I don't have an immediate qualification for that. I'm familiar with the terminology for it, but
it better be
allow me to.
Otherwise, it's not a proof.
Well, sure. If that's what you mean by proof, yeah, sure. We can think of it deductively. I mean, in a sense, I am deducing this in the most literal sense. So yeah.
You know what a deductive argument is, yeah?
Yeah, giving...
It's a set of premises from which the conclusion necessarily follows.
Yep.
Okay, so you have
that. Yeah, basically, I mean, that's what I've been doing, right? I've been set of premises, PSR, etc., yada yada. So yeah.
I still don't know what the premises are, but that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, we can move on to that in a minute. But because we were still talking about what's required for science, right?
Okay. So let me get this straight. So what you're basically saying, you're basically telling me, is that you agree with the symmetry break that the strong PSR is that for every fact whatsoever, including contingent, necessary, or even supposedly divine facts, there must be some sufficient reason as to why that's the case. And the weak PSR, as I understand, the symmetry break between it is that for every contingent or empirical event, there's a cause or explanation. Is that an accurate symmetry break between the two?
Well, the weak PSR doesn't say anything about empirical, but it does say stuff about contingency, and it says that it's possible that it has an explanation. So the difference between the weak PSR and the strong PSR is that the weak PSR is only talking about contingent truths, contingent facts, and it's not even saying that it must have an explanation, merely that it's possible that it has an explanation.
Okay,
and
wonderful.
Given that version of the weak
no
PSR,
problem.
it's
No
kinda
problem.
like trivially true.
We'll work wonderfully with your weak version of PSR.
But
Just
that's
stick to
not.
it.
Hold on, just to be clear, I don't care about the weak PSR. That doesn't have anything to do with anything I said. I was talking about a different, perhaps even weaker still version of the PSR, which is merely talking about physical facts, physical contingent facts, requiring an explanation.
So you granted just now to the live audience and everyone here that is the defined symmetry break between the strong and the weak PSR. And then you proceeded to say that you believe in your own weaker version of the PSR.
The weak version of the PSR says nothing about empirics. It says nothing about physical facts. It's just not in the weak version of the PSR. Does it say something
about contingencies?
It only says yes, it says contingent things. Mm-hmm. It is possible that contingent facts have an explanation.
And you believe something even weaker than that?
Yeah, that's all that's required for science, yes.
Okay, so do you believe, so let me rephrase one more time to fit your model.
Well, I suppose it's not strictly weaker. There's some parts where it's stronger and some parts where it's weaker. So it's weaker in the sense that it requires it only talks about an even smaller subset of facts. It talks about physical contingent facts. But on the other hand, we generally in science assume that physical contingent facts do have an explanation rather than it just being possible that they have an explanation.
Okay, is it fair to say that the formal symmetry break between the strong and the weak PSR is such that the weak PSR is that for every contingent event or fact, there's a cause or explanation sufficient for its occurrence?
That's not the weak PSR, no. I've read it to you now like 3 times. I don't know why you keep misquoting it.
The reason I'm misquoting it, the reason I'm having an incredibly tough time understanding this is because when I ask a simple question to ChatGPT about this, it outlines to me this symmetry break between the two of them. And you're saying that this symmetry break is not the case, and that the symmetry break actually isn't about contingency, that the symmetry break is merely about physical states of affairs.
Wait, you're so confused. Why are you so confused about this? Look, there are 3 versions of the PSR that we're talking about here. You brought up the weak PSR for whatever reason. I don't know why. There's the strong PSR, which is the definition that you agreed to 5 minutes ago. It's the one that every fact has a sufficient reason for why that fact is true. And then there's the version of the PSR, which is weaker than that, which I proposed as being all that's required to do science. And this refers to physical facts having or contingent physical facts having requiring a sufficient reason. That is not the weak PSR. That is some other thing. You can give it a name if you want. It's just a different.
Okay, so that other thing, let me get this straight. That other thing that I want to give it a name if I want to, that's what you are holding to, correct?
That's what I think is required by science, yes.
Okay. Now, can you please demonstrate to me that is the actual symmetry break? Because the symmetry break seems to be for every contingent. And you also just 10 seconds ago, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm hearing stuff, you literally said there's 3 versions of it and then proceeded to only mention 2. Wherein the first definition is the strong version, and then you proceeded to say for every contingent material fact, there's some sufficient explanation. And omitting the third option, where we agreed 5 minutes ago that for every contingent fact, so there's now 3 different versions. There's for every fact. Let me get this straight. So do we agree on this or not? Because you are confusing the fuck out of me.
I'm going to clarify. The weak
No, you don't need to
PSR
clarify. Let me outline it for you you can
Chad,
clarify my
Chad,
misconception.
let me just explain to you what's going on. Why I
you
only
don't need to
mentioned 2 rather
explain
than
to me
3.
what's going on. Just
You said that you're confused.
can you not talk for 15 seconds and then I will cede the floor to you.
I think if you
no problem.
I think if you watch this back, I think you'd find that you've talked for 80% of it.
Yeah, no problem, because I'm making the positive claim. So we have created 3 versions. 1, strong PSR for every fact whatsoever. Weak PSR for every contingent fact. And the 3rd version is for every physical contingent fact. Is that correct?
Yes, those are 3 different versions of the PSR. Now, I didn't bring up the weak PSR at all. I don't care about that. It wasn't relevant for anything that I was talking about. You brought it up for some reason, and you confused it with what I was talking about. So we can drop the weak PSR. We can just talk about, Blitz's PSR if you want, and then we can talk about the strong PSR. And we can
the one he's
these.
defining into existence, right?
It's just a principle that I think is required. There's no issue with saying
exactly
that I think
the one that you're
principle.
conveniently defining into existence as you proceed to critique me for defining things into existence.
So
the irony of that.
I'm just telling you what I think the principle is that's required for science. If you don't like me using something that hasn't been, I'm sure it's been discussed in the literature, but if you don't like the fact that I'm using my brain to come up with something rather than just reading off of ChatGPT, then I don't know what to tell you, man. Sometimes I have
no problem. How about I parrot that back to you?
Yeah,
well,
sure.
My proposition of God being non-causal is just what I think. And so if you're talking to me, how about you operate within the domain of what I think?
You can, except it's not what you think. What you
if
think.
If you can do that for the
already.
Definition of PSR, and I'm supposed to take that as a valid definition of the PSR.
To be clear,
you just made you made a unique definition for yourself just now.
Chad, look, if you said, I don't believe in God, I believe in Chad God, and Chad God is just whatever is non-causal and non-contingent. I'd be like, okay, cool. You defined your own new thing. You believe in that? Great. But Chad, that's not what you believe in. I played a clip of you saying what you actually believe in. This is a philosophical game to you. You're just trying to define God into existence so that you can feel good about the God that you actually believe in and think that you won defending Jesus, right? But that you are not defending the thing you actually believe in, right?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? No, that's absolutely not true. So let's just proceed forward with your custom-made version of the PSR. For every physical contingent fact, there's a sufficient explanation. Is that an adequate version of your unique version of the PSR?
And I'm going to add something else. I think that it's possible that physical necessary facts can also have explanations, but they can only be explained by necessary things as well. So it's possible that necessary things also have explanations, right? You can have a chain of necessary things that all necessarily follow. But as far as contingent facts, yes, they must have an explanation. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So if the set of all contingent physical facts is represented as C, past, present, and future, and the explanation for C is represented as E, E cannot be a part of C. Do you agree?
Sorry, C isn't a physical fact.
Wait, I literally said, for every single contingent physical fact, past, present, and future, we will call that C.
Yeah, C is an abstract set containing propositions. It's not a physical fact.
What are you on? There's no progress to be made with you.
You're talking about abstract. You're talking about a list of a set of propositions. A set of propositions is not a physical fact.
A set of propositions is not a physical fact.
No, of course it's not.
Okay,
it's a set of propositions.
Talking about physical facts.
Right. So the proposition.
What about now?
Sounds good.
That sounds better. And there are
my fault,
chats
man.
We do need to go through. So when there's
a
break here, I'd like to go through those. So go ahead and finish your point, and then I'd like to touch on these real fast, and we'll get back into the conversation.
I like the lightheartedness. Finish your point. No. So when we speak of physical facts, is it merely the limitation of our language that we speak of them as propositions? So, for example, when I speak the proposition an electron exists, does that negate the reality that an electron exists because I'm stating a proposition and it's not a physical fact?
We can have, so look, propositions can represent physical facts. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. There we go. We got that. So propositions can represent physical facts. So when I make a proposition that represents the set of all contingent physical facts, do you still have a ridiculous contention with that?
Calling it ridiculous is a cool way to put it.
No,
Well,
you
but
shouldn't,
look,
because you're an honest interlocutor, right?
Chad,
and you're not a dumb guy, right?
So Chad, if you want me to answer, I will. So a proposition can point to a physical fact, right? A collection of propositions can't point to a physical fact, right? A collection of propositions is not.
They can point to the set of all facts. It points to the set of all facts.
Right. So it points to a set.
Okay, so let me get this
straight to you. A set of all facts is not a fact.
Yeah. So when a proposition, like the standard model, points to the set of all things within it, like Hilbert spaces, Dirac, Higgs, Kobayashi matrices, is that not referencing a physical fact? Because it's a set, right?
Well, to be clear, the standard model is not a proposition, right? Like this is a category error. It's also not a set.
The standard model is not a set of equations.
Not really.
It
I mean, you can probably write it that way.
My friend,
the
standard model is a well-defined set of equations.
The standard model is a Lagrangian.
That uniquely operate for certain things.
So talking slowly won't make you look smart in front of somebody who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to physics. The standard model is Lagrangian, right? Like it's not a set of equations. It's a Lagrangian.
Okay, so there isn't. Let me get this straight. So when you're saying it's a set of equations, right? So, for example, the Hilbert space, Yang-Mills, Maxwell, are they distinct equations?
All right. Can you repeat that sentence again? It seemed distinct.
So Hilbert spaces, complex Hilbert spaces, which is like the domain within which any or quantum state exists as a vector. That's a unique set of equations.
A Hilbert space
the
isn't an equation.
Yang-Mills Maxwell equations, are they unique?
The Hilbert space isn't an equation. It's not a set of equations either.
No problem. It isn't. I misspoke. Perhaps it's not a set of equations. It is the domain within which the equations exist. Is that a more adequate?
No, the equations don't exist in it either. That's a category error. Equations don't exist within a vector space, which is what a Hilbert space is. It's a type of vector space.
Okay, no problem. So it's a vector space. And a vector space is defined in what? What do we use to define a vector space?
A set of axioms that define vector spaces.
And how are these sets of axioms formalized?
You write them down on a piece of paper.
And what's that called? Equations.
No, they're not equations.
So when I naturally reference equations,
they're literally not equations.
Okay, all right. Perhaps.
Do you know what a vector space is?
Perhaps I'm too illiterate to make that, and I will secede that. Perhaps it is the case, and I'm illiterate in this degree. Now, is it the case that Hilbert spaces, the Yang-Mills Maxwell equations, the Dirac equations, the Higgs equations, are these unique, distinct, and are represented for certain domains? For example, the Maxwell equations are for gauge bosons, right? Broadly speaking,
Yang-Mills,
it's not just that.
So the Maxwell's equations are specifically for, well, okay, yeah, we have to be a little bit careful. So traditionally, the Maxwell equations are specifically for U1 principal gauge bosons.
Sure. U1, SU1, SU2, SU3. Yes, these equations.
Yeah. Well, no,
I don't operate
Maxwell's equations are specifically for U1.
Okay, let me not pretend I'm a mathematician. I'll cede the floor to you all day and every day for solving a differential equation. So you got me beat in that respect. What? All hands down. Now, for example, is it the case that, for example, the Dirac equations, which to my understanding give emergence to mass, sorry, not mass, matter, like what comprises baryonic matter, right? Quarks, etc. So is that set of equations unique to Hilbert and Maxwell? Is that true?
Well, I don't know what do you mean is it unique to Hilbert and Maxwell? Hilbert and Maxwell, like, you're
Are
clearly
they
not referring to the
literally
people.
different? Like when you write them down and you write the axioms for this, that are they literally different when you formulate and operate with
So
them? Are they
the Hilbert
distinct?
space, so they're axioms that must be satisfied in order for something, a vector space, to be a Hilbert space. It has to be a complete inner product space that, there's a few other things that I can never remember. There's some axioms required for a vector space to be a Hilbert space. The equations are equations that can tell
they
you
are
how
equations
states
now.
they're well, no, I mean, like, the Dirac equation is, for example, is an equation. The Hilbert space
Also,
is not
the
an equation.
Dirac equation is an equation. Okay.
Nobody said it
All right,
wasn't.
we're making some progress. We're making some progress.
So, Chad, I understand that typically talking down to people is, how you feel like you're winning. But right now, I'm providing you free education on, like, Hilbert spaces, on the Dirac equations, and the Yang-Mills equations, on principal gauge bundles. Like, we can talk about that. But I would suggest not talking down to me, and we can just have a normal conversation, okay?
I'm trying not to, right? And to a certain degree, but it's like we're questioning every single thing that seems to be so obvious, and we're kind of like gridlocking on it. And now we've deviated into I don't really know what. So
I don't know why you brought up Hilbert
try
spaces.
to. I'm gonna try and reel
This would be a
it back
good time
in.
to address a couple audience questions, and then we'll get
No
to a
problem.
few more here. So Ian, Matt, and calm Chad down a little bit. So Ian Maston, question for both Chad and Blitz: do you believe science and God are mutually exclusive?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, the short and sweet of that is, they're not mutually exclusive. And what I'm trying to point out in the most top-down proposition is that the core tenet of what you mean when you invoke the term God and its necessary ontology is that which is non-causal. So and physics invokes this property, and so thereby they invoke the first core tenet of the ontology of God. And therein is what I am trying to demonstrate to you as a proof by direct invocation.
So to be clear, when you say science proves God, do you mean that, like, the idea of science requires some philosophical stuff that therefore implies God? Or do you mean, like, what most people mean when they say that science proves something?
Well, I understand a scientific proof is an empirical. One second, I don't want to misspeak on this because it's quite a well-defined proposition, right? A scientific proof in this case is a strong empirical confirmation or corroboration under falsifiable testing within a theoretical framework. That's the most clear-cut, generally accepted definition of this.
I would say that science only provides supporting evidence for claims, and then can also provide disproof of claims.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Would you agree with that? Because otherwise you run into the problem of induction. Right. So
no, absolutely. It's only strong empirical evidence. It could be otherwise.
Right. And so when you say that science proves God, do you mean that it proves it deductively using the scientific method? That you can prove God exists deductively using the scientific method? The same way
I would say, if you can follow me on this, right? My assertion is that one might ask, how do you prove identity? Well, the proof of identity is in the fact that it's necessarily invoked. So when you attempt to prove identity, you unironically invoke identity within your proof. So then it somewhat becomes redundant to prove it, because to prove it is to invoke it. And so in an exact analogy, if we have outlined the ontologically necessary property of God as being non-causal, and then you invoke the property of something being non-causal to even therefore continue to make any assertion of any kind, do you not therefore prove it equally as you would prove identity by necessarily invoking it? Isn't that a proof by necessity?
Yeah, so we can talk about that, but you're just not providing a scientific proof, right? That's just not what you're doing. You're providing some sort of like philosophical transcendental argument, which, you know, maybe we can talk about that and we can go into the details of why that transcendental argument fails, but it's not a scientific proof. So it seems like it's just not in the context of the debate.
So this is what I mean. It's because the question is
the topic is,
yeah,
does science prove God? So make sure that if you are doing that, you're tying that back into the topic directly.
Yeah, but we're not talking about you're invoking the scientific method and empirical proof. The broader question is right? yeah, no, the broader question is, does science, the practice of this, invoke this property? And if it invokes this property such that you can even practice science, how is that not a proof for the property?
It might be, but it's not a scientific proof, right? Mm-hmm. That's the distinction that I'm drawing.
Right. And therein comes the conundrum, right? One. I understand that, right? The conundrum is, since to use science, you have to use X, can then science prove X? How could it? It invokes it fundamentally.
You're on the money, which means that science can't prove God.
No. What you're asking for when it comes when it comes from the absolute strong empirical confirmation or corroboration under falsifiable testing within a theoretical framework, within that frame of reference, whenever we continue to do this investigation and given the theoretical framework we're operating within, we invoke this property to have the said theoretical framework. And then when we test the said theoretical framework against the natural world, that is sufficiently proven as a necessary proposition and a necessary set of attributes you're attributing directly to what you're invoking to make the theoretical framework, which you are then trying to justify. So if within your theoretical framework exists nested this proposition, and then you prove the theoretical framework, are you therefore not immediately also proving the conditions that gave rise to the theoretical framework? Because if
no, that's assuming that's affirming the consequent, right? Like, that's a logical fallacy, and not an informal fallacy. It's a formal logical fallacy. So if let's say A causes, let's say God, the existence of God implies that science works. If you then go and show that science works, that does not mean that that God exists, right? Assuming that's the case is affirming the consequent. Mm-hmm. It's a logical fallacy. Like you're just confusing induction and deduction.
Yeah, but how would you prove in any way, whether it be through ontological necessity, whether it be through the principle of sufficient reason, how would you prove the premise that you provided? Because the premise I'm providing, that God is non-causal, is proven with strong and the weak version of PSR, and I dare even say it's proven with your custom version of the PSR, indirectly invoked therein. And that if you have because this is how we reel it all back in, right? Before we start talking about Hilbert spaces and all this stuff, I wanted to get into something very important, right? Which is where we left off is you had a problem with the fact that the set of all physically contingent.
Hold on, it seems like you're pivoting back to this bit, because we were talking about how
we never got past it. We deviated into this.
I know, but I literally just told you that the primary argument that you're making, that under your view, science requires God, or God provides the grounding for science, thereby saying science works and therefore God must exist, is affirming the consequent. That is a logical fallacy that you're making. It's not an informal fallacy. This is a false statement you're making. It's not true.
No, I think it's a kind of a little bit of wordplay. Affirming the
This is
consequences.
literally, you're
the
saying
wordplay.
God implies science works, therefore God exists.
It
That's what you're
invokes its
saying.
core property.
No, but right, but that is affirming the consequent. You're saying A implies B, B is true, therefore A is true. It just doesn't follow. It's not a deductive argument.
A implies B,
Yeah. So if A implies B and B is
but
true,
it doesn't,
that doesn't mean A is
imply
true.
it. It's saying it's necessary. It's not just implication here.
What's not so what's the let's put it in variables. What's the statement that you're trying to make?
That if we're working within your framework, A necessitates B, not implies it, necessitates it. You cannot
Okay.
have A without B.
So right, so A necessitates B. B is true. It does not imply that A is true.
They're the same thing. How does that not work? If A equals B, does
Are you
B
saying
not
God
equal
equals
A?
science?
God
A
equals
necessitates B is
the
not the same
core
as A
tenet,
is.
the absolutely irreducible core tenet of science, upon which you build out the framework, is that tenet. So yes, A is equivalent to B.
So you're saying God is
literally.
equivalent to science?
Not science in its colloquial sense when people talk about, oh,
Science
let's
in
do
what sense?
the absolute core tenet of it.
Which is
That there's some irreducible non-causal framework from which then something emerges. That framework having the property of being non-causal, meaning the property of non-causality is exactly equal. The property of non-causality in the absolute most raw sense is absolutely parallel and equivalent to, with no symmetry break, to the absolutely necessary property of God. It doesn't imply it. It's equal to it.
does
A
God
is
ground
equal
the
to
universe in your
B.
view?
I believe I would say so. Yeah, in the most crude
Okay,
sense.
does science ground the universe in your view? Like the scientific principle?
Yeah, that's the aim of it. Exactly. It's to
Okay,
explain and ground
what's
the
the
origin and the laws.
Well, it's to explain it, right? It's not to ground it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about ontological grounding here, by the way, not explanatory grounding. So does God ontologically ground the universe?
By being the non-causal agent. Yeah.
Okay. Wait. Okay. Hold on. Well, we could talk about that, but okay. And now now does the principle of sufficient reason ontologically ground the universe?
The principle of sufficient reason, does it ontologically ground the universe?
Mm-hmm.
No, it grounds science.
Okay, I'm glad we agree. So God, in your worldview, God ontologically grounds the universe. In your worldview, the PSR does not ontologically ground the universe. Therefore, God cannot be the PSR, meaning that God cannot be the core tenet of science. So these are not identical.
I think that within the PSR is embedded something as well. The PSR is not the absolute core tenet. Can you have the PSR
What's the absolute
without
core
identity?
tenet then? Because so what you said earlier.
Yeah. So like,
is
can
that
you
the
have
PSR is
let
the
me,
absolute core tenet of
yeah,
science?
yeah.
Those are your words.
Can you have the PSR without identity?
Yeah, sure.
Really?
Yep.
How do you suppose this?
It's not invoked anywhere in the PSR.
So when you say for every fact or physical fact or contingent, that's not an identity of something you're referencing?
When
Even
you
the
say
words
identity,
that
are you referring
using,
to the logical law of identity that A equals A? That is a true
Yeah.
proposition? Okay, then no, that's
Yeah.
not invoked by the PSR. In fact, that's like it
I
doesn't even
don't-
make
I
sense to
don't-
say
I
that it's
don't
invoked
even-
by it because the law of identity is used in deductive proofs, but the PSR is a proposition, it's not a proof.
Okay, and so let me understand this. Propositions don't invoke identity.
Well, I mean, they can, but they don't have to.
They literally do in
I
every
mean,
single case.
To be clear, you're referring to the law of identity, right?
Yeah,
You're not referring to
exactly.
just, like,
That
the
you're
abstract. Then no, of course they don't.
They literally do, because when you
Where?
say the words in your proposition, that word has an identity, correct?
That's not what the law of identity is. Not just that things have identity. That's not what the law of identity is. It's the law of identity is a proposition that states that a thing is equal to itself. It's a proposition. It has a truth value. It's not just like this vague notion of identity.
Mm-hmm. And is it the true case that within the PSR, that is exactly what you're invoking? That when you mean material contingent, you mean that material is equal to material, right?
No, you
That's
don't
what
need
you
that
mean?
anywhere in the PSR. It's not.
Okay,
It's
and
usually
the-
not present in the PSR.
And that's the initial hour. There is an hour
Literally
that's
embedded
getting
in
added.
it.
Hang on 1 second. So there's an hour that's getting added on right now for the super chats. There's also a few super chats. As I said, the questions will get asked during the debate. I'd like to ask a few questions real quick, and then we'll move back into this. There are a couple comments. I'll read the comments after the actual debate portion finishes. But Nobody on Fire was asking, where's the science? And that's a good point, as a lot of this has been logic related, which isn't directly tied into the science, right? And so
No, it's not. You're right. And the issue with that is what I tried to introduce in my introduction. I tried to very clearly say that, and I'll read it back to you verbatim. Wouldn't it be pertinent to profile
Back up
that
a
which
little
you're
bit.
looking? Sorry, yeah. Wouldn't it be pertinent to profile that which you're looking for if you're trying to prove it? So the reason we have been stuck in this like semantic, ontological, metaphysical like loop we can't get out of is because before I can even begin to try to prove to you God, we must first agree what we even mean when we say God. We haven't been able to get past that. So there is no possible way I can then proceed to invoke any science, any sort of empirical evidence to prove to you a thing we can't even agree its properties are. Not that it exists, but that these are the necessary properties when you invoke this word.
So Chad,
And if we
can I ask
can't
you a
make it
question?
past that, I don't know where we can go.
So Chad, so look, suppose I'm a mathematical monist, right? It's something that I toy around with. I'm not sure if like I'm kind of agnostic on it. But suppose I'm a mathematical monist, and I take the view that all mathematical objects exist, and that's all that exists. Everything, and then let's say I'm a bundle theorist on top of that, and I say, look, mathematical properties mathematical properties are the physical properties, and as bundle theory says, once you have the properties, you have the thing, and so everything is emergent from mathematics. And I say, okay, well, this like the set, or not the set, the family, the collection of all mathematical objects, these are the only things that exist. They don't have a mind. They don't have a will. Would you still call me an atheist?
In lay terms, yes, because I believe the definition of theism is once more, the personal relationship or the ability to communicate with God. And so unless you want to extend that definition to saying I have somehow communicated in virtue of understanding the pure realm of mathematics, which I don't think you'd be willing to make that kind of bridge. If you were unwilling to make that, then yes, you would be categorically an atheist. However, if you're intellectually pliable, and then you could conjecture the notion that to have ascertained mathematical principles that are pure, immutable, infallible, as they are necessarily asserted to be, then having ascertained this information, that is a method of communication, crudely speaking. So depends on how much leeway you want to have with the idea of communicating with this.
The reason I ask is because it seems like under your definition of God, you would say, oh, you believe in God. And so then again, under your definition of God, I would be justified in saying, yep, I'm a theist. And if I go up to somebody and tell them that, they will be very confused about what I believe. They would be like, doesn't that make you an atheist? You don't think it has a...
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I said to you. Exactly. Like colloquially speaking, you would be an atheist.
That's just what the word means then, bro. Like, look,
no, the words implicate the word of theism. The word of theism
different. Is your worldview substantively different from the worldview of a mathematical monist?
In my personal beliefs, yes, it is. I would say so. In the things
I
that
think
I
those are
can
the only
ground to
things that are
you
relevant.
in a deductive syllogistic proof and things like this, perhaps you could say maybe it isn't all that wildly different. But in my
So then
personal
it
belief,
just seems
yeah,
like the
it's
thing that
wildly
you can
different.
deduce is consistent with what people would understand as atheism.
No. Well, hold on. Conducive with atheism.
The things that you
so,
can defend here, the God
right.
that you are defending, that you say that you can prove exist, if you explained that to random people on the street, they'd be like, "Oh, so you're an atheist."
Well, here's the thing, right? In every again 2025 Abrahamic school of thought definition, P1 of God is he's non-causal. So whenever you address that, before you talk about his omnibenevolence, his will, his ability to communicate with you, in that core tenet, because you must assert that primordial to anything, even if you were to write it as a syllogism, like God is non-causal, and therefore because God is non-causal, therefore he's omnipotent and omniscient. Omniscience and omnipotence is not primordial to non-existence, because if you're just to say God is omniscient and omnipotent, you're kind of invoking that anyway, indirectly. And if you're not, then once again, you equivocate on contingency. You equivocate on the fact that there's an omnipotent, omniscient, contingent thing. But when people speak of God, before they speak of omniscience, omnipotence, anything else, a barefoot Muslim Bedouin who is illiterate would tell you God doesn't come from anywhere. He's non-causal. He would have a very wild opinion on what God knows about him or what God can do for him. That's his power and his knowledge. But insofar as the core tenant fact that God doesn't emerge from anywhere or is not caused by anything, that is a universally held belief.
Look, so you can have, suppose for a moment that you're that one of the properties of God, perhaps even the fundamental property of God, is that it's not caused, right? Suppose that that's true. You can still have other things that are not God that also have that property. And so, it just seems like, okay, so say you can prove that there exists a something that's not caused. Non-causal, I think, means something else. But suppose that you can prove that there exists something that's not caused. Now you need to establish that it's God and not any of the other possible things that it could be that's not caused.
Yeah, I have established that by demonstrating to you that this is the ontologically necessary symmetry break, because otherwise you would be equivocating on terms.
Look, if let's say that I think that all of mathematics is, I mean, mathematics is kind of by definition non-causal, right? Like it doesn't cause anything, and it certainly doesn't have a cause if you're a mathematical monist anyway.
Well,
and
it invokes logic, right?
It's also non-contingent. I'm sorry.
It invokes logic, correct?
Well, that would be in existence if you're a mathematical monist. So like those would just be true. Those would just be true propositions. So mathematical monism is the view that all that exists is mathematics, and you could actually, I think that there's a word for it. It's like maximal mathematical monism or something like this, where it's not only that the only things that exist are mathematics, but that every consistent mathematical object exists. And so look, if you take that view, well, those mathematical objects are non-causal, they are non-contingent, but they definitely don't have a mind. They definitely don't have a will. They definitely don't have power. It's not even it's a category error to say that mathematics has power. So like this would just not be the thing that you're referring to when you say God, right?
Wait. Oh. Didn't you tell me that mathematics gives rise to literally everything thereafter?
Yeah, but
how is that not power? So if it's a grounding hold on, let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. If from mathematics, as you're saying, a mathematical monist, or whatever this is, you're asserting that that's the foundational bedrock, and from mathematics emerges literally everything, correct?
Yeah, that would be the view under mathematical monism.
Okay, so if everything emerges from mathematics, how does mathematics then not pertain every set of possible existences and all sets of possible information? Wouldn't that necessarily follow?
I have no idea what that question means.
Yeah. Okay. You said mathematics, from mathematics, would emerge everything. Physics, space-time, etc. So that is the dominion of all things that are possible physically, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So mathematics has governance over all possible physical states of affairs, right?
It's more that mathematics is everything.
Okay, wonderful. Same thing. Then mathematics would be omnipotent, as it has it within it contains the set of principles that gives rise to every single emergent thing from it. That would
I don't
literally
think
necessitate.
I think that's just equivocating on the word
that
omnipotent.
It's not equivocating. It's what you're
I mean,
directly
like, can you define
implying.
omnipotent then?
Omnipotent is the possibility to actualize all states of logically possible affairs.
Yeah, so mathematics doesn't actualize anything.
Okay, so mathematics
just mathematics.
so as a
just is
mathematical
actual. It just exists
monist,
everything.
as a mathematical monist, does mathematics actualize the universe?
No, mathematics is everything.
Okay, so
It doesn't bring it about.
okay,
Right.
so let me get this straight. If mathematics is everything,
Hmm.
what is the symmetry break between an electron and math?
An electron would be represented by math, and that's the point. The electron is the collection of mathematical properties that it has.
Okay, so in that sense, I would just be fair to say that everything is math.
Yes, under the mathematical monist view, yes, that is the
Okay,
view.
so that is the death of philosophy. You have equivocated everything to math. So now there's nothing we can say. Like math is my shit in the toilet. Math is my thought
No,
I
your
have
shit in
right
the
now.
toilet.
Math,
Not the other way around.
that's math. That's everything. So you have equivocated on the term math, and you
No,
have
this isn't
turned math
equivocation.
into a meaningless
Do you know what equivocation
statement
means?
because math is equivalent to everything, and everything is math. So what the fuck
Look,
is math? It's just everything, apparently.
Look, so math, I mean, in some sense, in the vaguest sense, math is what mathematicians do, right? But no, I mean, like, look, the point is,
you don't even believe your own proposition.
I'm kind of with it. I'm undecided on mathematical monism, but the reason I brought it up is because it's a not so unpopular view. Like there are serious philosophers who hold this view, and I'm just confused because it seems like under your definition of God, that person would be a theist, even though they share no beliefs in common metaphysically with you.
Okay, can I elucidate to you what I tried to explain to you earlier? So you said math is everything. 5 times over, and I repeated it 10 times over. All right. So what's the symmetry break between you saying math is everything and I'll say to you, my shit in the toilet is everything?
Math is a larger collection of things than the shit in your toilet.
Ah, really? But it's everything. So you're saying there's a larger collection of everything than the everything?
No, I mean like look,
No. So there isn't a larger collection of everything.
Maybe
right?
you're just not understanding like the mathematical monism view, and I get that because if you haven't heard of it,
I'm
it sounds
not.
very weird.
That's why I'm posing this very pertinent question.
So then let me explain. So the idea is that so I don't know your views on like Platonism. Do you think that numbers exist like independently and abstractly? Like, do you think the number 5 exists?
I believe personally, and this again is my belief. I believe that there is a Platonic domain of things that is what we would call the divine domain, and that divine domain influences and directly governs our world. It is the perfect nature, for example, of mathematics, and that's why in physics there's this absolutely astounding symmetry with perfect mathematics
way off
and
topic. I was just asking
actual reality.
Right. So the reason look, if you think that numbers actually exist, they have an actual ontology in the abstract world or in the Platonic world, then all I mean when I say math is everything is that the only things exist are the mathematical objects like numbers, like vector spaces, like propositions. The only things that exist are those things in the Platonic realm where math things live. That's the claim. Now, if you say, well,
okay, so math isn't everything. Math is just this thing.
No, it's
that you
those
just
are the only things that exist are those things.
Okay, so that is everything then.
Yes, those things.
Okay.
If you take the collection of all of those things, that would be everything, right? Because
wonderful.
There's nothing else.
So let me get this straight. So it would be valid for me to write this down and is to say math equals everything.
Probably more precise to say the collection of all mathematical objects is everything.
Wonderful, no problem. The collection of all mathematical objects is everything. Now, explain to me the symmetry break between me saying the collection of all the shits I've ever taken equals everything.
Yeah, because there are other things besides that, right? That we can point to.
No, but what do you mean? I'm saying to you that's my assertion.
So one is demonstrably.
Wait. Are you proving? Let me get this straight. Are you proving to me that math is? Are you asserting it?
No, I'm not. Look, so
one you're asserting it. You're just simply asserting this, right?
Chad. So the claim all of the shits are everything. That's demonstrably false, right? Like we can just go point to something else. Now, the claim that all that exists are mathematical objects. That's not as clearly demonstrably false.
Okay, let me get this straight. So it is a claim.
Well, look, I mean, it's a metaphysics, and metaphysics.
No problem. So it's not proven. You're not proving this. You're just claiming this.
Chad, I never made the claim that this is like demonstrably provable. I was asking, given this view, would you call that person a theist or a deist, or at least not an atheist?
Given that view,
yeah,
on the classical terminology of theism, yeah, they would be an atheist, perhaps in some crude sense, maybe an agnostic, but most likely an atheist.
Okay, so
but definitely not a theist.
Yeah, okay, we agree. Would you say that person believes in God?
They believe in the core tenet of God's properties. Yes, ontologically.
Well, they believe in something that has something in common with God. That doesn't mean that they're the same thing.
The core tenet, the absolutely fundamental necessary proposition is that. Now here's
and then there's other stuff, right? God has other properties too. Yeah,
I hear you, right? And then there's different types of mathematics too, right? There's not like one you absolutely
so many. Mathematics is a very, very large field.
Yeah, wonderful, right? But isn't there a core tenet amongst every one of these theorems that is shared?
Maybe.
Yes, absolutely. So what you're doing is you're saying, oh, there's different flavors of it, and they expound and have different propositions. So maybe they're paraconsistent, maybe they're not. Maybe it's Euclidean or non-Euclidean. Who knows, right? But the core tenet of Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry is the same.
Wait, hold on. What's the same core tenet?
I would be logic, to my understanding, that it invokes logic.
But which logic?
Well, it fundamentally invokes identity. For example, for you to say X is something, yeah, you're invoking identity.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
it is true that like Euclidean geometry and like Riemannian geometry, whatever, these things require generally let me rephrase. Various theorems in these branches of mathematics, proving them requires law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and so on.
Yeah. So they invoke a core tenet that is ubiquitous amongst all fields of mathematics, to my knowledge, and unless you can somehow bring a system of mathematics that does not invoke identity.
There's like trinary logic. I'm sure that we could come up with something. The point is
coming up with something would be to first.
Hey, Chad, let's not ever talk him when he's making a point.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'm bad about this.
So I mean, look, you could come up with something, and as long as it's consistent, it would exist in mathematical monists' world, right?
Mm-hmm. And making any proposition about any said theoretical model would invoke you saying there's a core axiom, and when you define that axiom, you would be invoking that axiom is itself, and that would be invoking identity. It would be impossible
you don't
for
invoke
you.
That. Why would you have to invoke that?
Because you're literally asserting the axiom is itself.
No, you're not. That's why would you have to do that? You wouldn't have to do that.
Okay, so could the axiom be not itself?
Are you asking, is the law of identity false?
No, I'm asking you the whatever mathematical system that you conjecture, whenever you say P1 of said conjecture, could P1 be not P1?
There's probably a logical system where that's the case, yeah.
There isn't. Saying probably is like invoking the
you might be right here,
notion.
but I wouldn't be surprised.
I am right here. You're not to be rude, my friend. I watched a little clip of your video. You're a very intelligent dude, very insightful, and you seem to be formally educated to this to a degree that I wish I was, right? Now, at a certain point in time, saying probably to propositions that are immediately obvious.
I'm sorry, you're wrong about this. I just looked it up. There's something called Schrodinger logics, which are a kind of non-classical logic in which the law of identity is restricted.
Restricted.
Yeah, meaning that it doesn't always apply.
And what are the core tenets of this? Would you be willing to ask ChatGPT, for example, like what are the fundamental axioms of Schrodinger's or whatever this was? I don't remember the name of it.
Sure, I will look it up for you.
And when it invokes the first fundamental axiom, could that axiom be otherwise? And if it is otherwise, wouldn't the entire system crumble? Because the entire system depends on that tenet always being true. And if it's not always true or not always itself, then everything you derive from it would be meaningless. Because any conclusion you would derive would therefore be possibly not the conclusion.
So a Schrodinger logic is I'm just reading on Wikipedia, it's a many-sorted logic in which the expression x equals y is not a well-formed formula in general, which means that even the notion of identity, that two things are equal, is just not well-formed in general.
Two things are equal? Wait, hold on.
Yeah,
it's not about x equals y. My friend, it's not x.
That's what the law of identity.
Wait, hold on. Does the law of identity say x equals y, or does it say x equals x?
Well, no. Just saying that two things are equal is not well defined in general.
I understand that. Logic. I understand that. Here's trying to answer my question directly. Does the law of identity say x equals y, or does it say x equals x?
The law of identity says for all x equals x.
Correct, right?
X equals y is a more general version of that.
Ah, wonderful. So it's literally to say that.
This is saying that the equal sign is just not well defined. It's just not well defined on all elements of the logic, right?
Okay, wonderful. But wouldn't it be proper if I were to expand this in a more kind of incredibly redundant way? I would say x equals x, y equals y, x equals y. Are you following me?
That would use the law of identity.
Okay. Now, when you say
if you said x, well, actually, no. I'm sorry. No, it wouldn't. Go ahead.
It literally does. It's that just replace x with a.
You said x equals x, y equals y, x equals y. That doesn't follow.
According to Schrodinger's paraconsistent logic, apparently.
No, that just doesn't follow classical logic either. You didn't relate x and y together, right? X equals x, y equals y. That doesn't mean x equals y.
Okay, so when let me provide the same contention to you. When they say x equals y, how did they corroborate that? How do they illustrate that? Take the same critique you just gave me the same critique you just gave me 10 seconds ago. How do you get from x equals x equals y to x equals y? How do you get to x equals y?
That's A and B don't imply C in that case. Like x equals y is not implied by x equals x and y equals y.
So what implies that x equals y?
You would need to know some facts about x and some facts about y in a classical logic.
Okay. No. In Schrodinger's logic, what gives you the ability to say x equals y?
That both x and y are so-called classical objects in the logic.
Okay. Now I will just say to you, x is a classical object. It's the same thing you told me. The same criticism you're giving me right now and the same answers you're giving me, I will just parrot them back to you. There's no difference. In the most honest lens, there is zero difference. I don't understand how you...
Between what? Between what?
Between saying x equals x, y equals y, x equals y, and then just saying x equals y. Like your assertion to say to me that P1 x equals x, P2 x equals y, P3 is x equals y. P3 is somehow not valid, but then you get to turn around and just put it as P1.
I think
it's valid.
Chad, I think you're very confused. Look, you made a statement, and perhaps I just shouldn't have addressed it because it just seemed like it was just like a blunder or something. But like you said, x equals x, y equals y, and therefore x equals y, and that's just false, right? Like it's not a valid form of inference. However, when we're talking about Schrodinger logics, when we're talking about whatever, like when we're talking about the law of identity, we're just talking about whether or not it makes sense to say that x equals x. Is that proposition true, false, or undefined, right? Because in some sense, it could be undefined. And in Schrodinger logics, there are classical objects, there are quantum objects, and apparently quantum objects or on quantum objects, it is undefined. The proposition x equals x or I'm sorry, the proposition for all x, x being a quantum object, x equals x, that proposition x equals x is undefined for any quantum object x. And so the law of identity just doesn't hold there.
Now, is that quantum object itself?
No, that's the point. It's not well defined. There is no identity relation between the quantum object and itself.
Then how are you calling it a quantum object? How have you given it an identity that you can seem to speak on?
I think you're
I know you are
this is
confusing
so
this.
sad.
You
This
are
is so
invoking the ability
You
to
think
somehow
that
have a
thing being
property
you
that
think
could
a
be
thing being a self-
compared.
Okay, look, the confusion that you're making is that you're thinking that the law of identity is just like a thing being something. That's not what the law of identity is. The law of identity is a proposition about objects in a logic, right? It's not just like, oh, anything being anything. Like that's not what it is. It's a very formal, very specific thing. And it just doesn't hold apparently in these Schrodinger logics. It does hold it in a lot of classical logics and in a lot of paraconsistent logics. It holds in a lot of cases that we can say that for all x, where x is an object in our logical system, x equals x. That's what the law of identity says. It doesn't just mean a thing is a thing. That like, oh, well, how can you say that a quantum object is a quantum object if that's unrelated to the law of identity? It's just not what it is.
In the most crude sense, identity is referencing that exact principle. You're just being
You were confusing
obtuse towards it.
identity with the law of identity. One is a colloquial philosophical notion. The other is a rigorous logical notion. You're confusing them.
Yeah, this rigorous logical notion, even in its expounded faculty that maybe I'm invoking, is absolutely introduced in Schrodinger's logics. And all you're just saying to me is that what you're saying to me is that the equal sign, you said this 5 minutes ago, isn't well defined. So it isn't that x isn't well defined. It's that the equivalency of x to something else,
To itself.
not to itself.
No, to itself. No, it's to
okay,
itself. It's undefined.
Okay. So wait.
Proposition
Is
x equals x is undefined.
P1 of Schrodinger's logic x equals y or x equals x?
I can read to you what the axioms that spat out at me.
That you have asserted multiple times P1 is x equals y. So the assertion is that
assert that. No, I didn't assert that. You must be confused. We can replay it if you want to. I said that x equals y is not a well-formed formula in general.
Why?
So the
Is it
relation
because
between
equals?
two things. Yeah, it's because of the equal sign.
Now, it's not a relation between two things. Identity is the relation between itself. You understand?
Itself and itself are two things.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah,
the
it is.
same entity you're
The
discussing.
law of identity is what asserts that they're the same thing.
They're not distinct, though. That's
The
the
only
point.
way you can tell that, the only way you can tell that they're not distinct is by invoking the law of identity. You're doing circular
They're not
reasoning here.
distinct because it exists as itself.
You're
You are
invoking
invoking two different variables, x and y, and then you're saying they're not equal to each other
So
because
in
equals
Schrodinger-
isn't well defined in this context.
So do you
But-
agree that the law of identity is for every x, where x is an object in the logic, x equals x? Do you agree that that's the law of identity?
That yes, x equals
Okay.
x. That it is itself.
No, it's not x equals x. It's for every x in the logical system, x equals x. That's the
No.
law of identity. It's not just x
to my
equals x.
hold on. No, brother. To my understanding, formal logic states a equals a.
That's not
like
the law of identity.
for every x That's not what's for every x.
Then you're mistaken.
There's a function.
Then you're mistaken.
Let me get this straight. When you say for every x, you're not invoking a function.
It's a universal quantifier.
Gotcha. So is that a function?
I don't know what you mean by a function.
Is
Do
a
you mean like a function in
universal
mathematical sense?
quantifier a function?
No.
Yes, it is.
I don't think you know what a function is. I also don't think you know what a universal quantifier is.
A universal quantifier is a function necessarily.
Can you define a function?
Because
please?
it qualifies
Can you define
something.
a function?
Yes, a function would be to qualify something.
Okay,
Like,
that's not
if
what a
I am
function
to
is. A function is a map
qualify-
from one
if
set
I
to
am to-
another.
Great, and that wouldn't that be called qualifying? If I had one set
No.
and then I needed to qualify inputs from
Chad-
that one set
Chad,
into
you
the
really
next
should
set,
not be- you re-
wouldn't
like-
that be qualifying it?
No.
Okay,
should really
all
not be
bro.
going
We
deep
are-
into, like-
we are reaching a
Like
semantic
philosophy of
impasse.
mathematics here. This isn't
Gotcha.
a semantic impasse. This is like
Taco, let's hear
you
some.
don't
Let's
actually
hear
know
some
what you're
questions,
talking
bro.
about,
Please.
impasse.
So there is one question. The rest of them are comments. I'm holding the comments till the end of the timer. But the question
No, let them rip, bro. Let these
Chad,
people
where
get it
the
out,
F
dude.
did the God debate go? And once again, that is a fair question given the topic.
It is.
Does science prove God?
Well, I will honestly answer that question once more in the best way I can. For us to be able to prove something, we must first qualify it. And until we can qualify it, we can do nothing about proving it. And we have been in a semantic impasse about the qualification of this term. And since we cannot qualify it, and we're stuck arguing whether X is itself or it's referencing something else, we can't make any progress. Unfortunately, I would love to. I really, really would like to present my argument, but I cannot, because unless my interlocutor is willing to qualify that which we're trying to prove and agree that these are the properties of that which we're trying to prove, how can I possibly attempt to prove to him that thing? How? Explain to me.
Was that a rhetorical question?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I mean, look, the reason we got stuck on this is because you were confused about what the law of identity is about. The law of identity is
confused.
propositional relation, and you got stuck on this whole business about, is there a universal underlying foundation for all mathematical objects? And like the answer is just no, I guess. Like there are coherent mathematical objects that have no relation to other sets of coherent mathematical objects. Like they just don't have to be related to each other. And so and we got stuck on the law of identity, and you're confusing it with like the philosophical notion of identity. I guess it just seems like, look, the reason why I brought up this mathematical monism stuff is merely because it seems like the thing that you're defending, which by the way is not actually the thing that you believe in, but the thing that you're defending is merely equivalent to any philosophical view in which there is a foundation. And there are so many foundationalist philosophical, like ontological foundation, I should say. There's so many philosophical views that have ontological foundations, and they're absolutely not. They're absolutely atheist views. And so it just seems like you're equivocating on what you mean by atheist, on what you mean by God. Like it just seems like this whole argument is an equivocation to try to define God into existence.
Okay, and I will repeat something back to you in the exact same lens, right? You stated...
Back up like a foot.
Okay, sorry. You stated that the law of identity is a proposition. It can't be. A proposition is a declarative statement that affirms or denies something about a subject, like the apple is red. Every proposition involves at least three elements: a subject, a predicate, and a copula, is or is not some operator, right? The moment we assert a subject is something, we presume that that subject is something definite, that it is identical to itself. Every proposition invokes identity necessarily. So then turning around and calling identity a proposition makes literally no sense. It's an equivocation of terms that I've expounded on for you very quickly. Now, if you want to start making up the Dr. Blitz version of what a proposition is so he can define his term proposition into existence, you can proceed to do that. But I think that's quite silly. There's no way in which you can call identity a proposition, and there's nothing about identity being referential to something else. Identity is that something is referential to itself. Not that there are two subjects, that there is one subject identical to itself. That's well understood, well outlined, and your inability to make a pass on this and kind of digging your heels on this is really confounding me. I don't get it. Now, so I understand perhaps you're not willing to make this concession, and that's fine. And for the audience as well, I would like to move on because genuinely speaking, I don't think you and I are going to concede our position here either way, and that's perfectly fine. So so that we don't continue to spin in this circle, because you've outlined your position quite clearly, I've attempted to do so as well here. I would like to, if possible, at least start to talk about science in the sense of how science pertains to my definition of God, as I've ontologically attempted to demonstrate the necessity of said definition. And you can say I don't grant that definition, but at least maybe we can make some progress into the science and not like a completely circular argument about what we believe identity is.
I mean, I don't think. Okay, you meant circles, and we kept going in circles. Not like that. The argument is circular. I mean, look, like
Very much
just
so,
to,
yes.
just to address your statement about like what a proposition is, like, I would put money on the fact that you read that off of ChatGPT. But and that's okay.
100%. I did.
And that's okay. But like, look, there are different. So what the definition that you gave is the definition of a proposition in propositional logic. The law of identity is not a law in proposition. Well. Yeah, it's not even really a law in propositional logic. It is a law in first order logic, which is a little bit bigger than propositional logic. And it involves universal quantification. And in that case, the law of identity genuinely is a proposition within first order logic. Like, it just is a thing. You need, like, if you're going to quantify over the universe of discourse, you need first order logic to do that. Or at least some kind of first order logic to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, it just is a proposition. It's a thing with truth value. It's either true or false, right? That's kind of what a proposition is.
That's fine. I find that to be more of a semantic disagreement. Yeah, okay. It's more of a semantic disagreement, and we're fine to have that. I think we should, at this point in time, we ought to have a conversation about something more pertinent, maybe not something so combative, because I genuinely think you have a pretty wide scope of understanding of physics. So there's a couple of questions I'd like to run past you and see, not necessarily as they may pertain or not pertain to God. I will attempt to explain to you as to how it pertains to the definition of God I understand, and see where it goes from there. So the first question I have to you is, I find that perhaps this is a seemingly what I find to be quite a misunderstood premise in physics, experimentally, empirically understood physics, right? Is it fair to say that a state in superposition is not collapsed by another state in superposition, meaning that they just become a larger state? Like
not so there. It depends on your preferred interpretation of quantum mechanics, right? Like, well, in some interpretations of quantum mechanics, there's no collapse at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other interpretations of quantum mechanics, it doesn't even make sense to talk about the thing that it interacts with being in superposition. Yeah, so it really just depends on your preferred interpretation.
Would we be able to stick to the interpretations that have empirical substance? Like, for
Literally
example, I understand that many. I would say some of them have a little bit more than others.
Literally none
for example,
of them do.
Like,
there's no way of distinguishing between any of them using empirical data yet.
Well, hold on, right? How do you square this then? Like, the many worlds interpretation literally suggests that there's an alternative world created at each measurement, which we here perceive as the collapse of a wave function, but it never really collapses because it deviates into another world. That's a pretty insane proposition, because you're literally suggesting some alternative dimension, universe, whatever that is, whatever schism that is, you're invoking that. And the argument is, can you substantiate that such a schism occurs? Obviously, no one has done this, right?
Look,
for example, the Copenhagen interpretation.
None of the interpretations have any empirical status, to be clear. Like none of.
Would you say that the Copenhagen interpretation is the most widely accepted and generally the most?
It's about it wins by plurality. But basically, every single philosopher of physics recognizes that it's completely incoherent. So like that's the thing that undergraduates
because of the measurement problem.
No, because it doesn't. I mean, it's completely incoherent because it doesn't even say. Well, it depends on what you mean by the measurement problem. It doesn't even say what a measurement is. It doesn't actually. It's not well defined, right? Like the Copenhagen interpretation is not well defined.
Exactly, and therein lies the mystery of it all.
Well, that's why every philosopher of physics just rejects it as incoherent, and they instead look at other interpretations which are at least coherent.
Well, there are solutions to something that is non-physical. So the reason it's incoherent. So let me expound to you why I understand it to be dubbed "quote unquote" incoherent, is because with every function of physics, for example, with the forces, we have the gauge bosons, right? For every bit of matter, we have a subatomic particle that represents it. So we can directly point at something towards something physical that actuates some thing we're observing, right? Even down to mass. We have the Higgs field and the Higgs boson, which interacts with it, and that's where mass comes from, right?
So
there's
it is questionable, like what is actually physical and what's not. Once you get to the ultra deep layer.
Yeah, but I holistically agree with you there. Now, isn't physics the study of things that are physical? Wouldn't it be a bit confounding for physics to assert that there's non-physical objects affecting the physical world?
This is like a deep question of like, how do you even define what a physical thing is? Like that's a deep question that, you know, I can't get, like, I could say that a physical thing is just what physicists study. In which case, then physical things are just like, then all the things that physicists talk about are physical. That's not a very satisfying definition, though.
I think I have a much more satisfying domain of what a physical is. It's something measurable, testable, repeatable in some faculty, one way or another, and even could be extended to the fact that there is, while not holistically measurable due to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you can understand the peak of a wave or the distances between waves, right? These are things that are measurable, testable in some faculty. When somebody asks, can you test a field directly? No, you can't. There's no like qualitative or quantitative properties we can attribute directly to the field. And I would argue that when you say physical, necessarily what you're invoking is some quantitative property you can measure. And if there are no quantitative properties to measure, it's pretty clear that that's not physical, what you're describing.
I mean, you know, you could use that as a definition. If you're talking about physical things, or those things that have quantitative, that have properties that can be quantified, like just like, you know, you can measure them or you can put numbers to them, I guess that's fine. But then you would have to be like, okay, well, the inside of a black hole isn't physical. And that's like a really weird thing to say, because like there's no reason to think that it's like not a place that you could go. But like in principle, you can't measure it without going in, right? And then you could never tell anybody what your measurements were, because, you know, black holes are black holes. Similarly, you would be forced to say that like the region of space beyond the observable universe is not physical. And that's also a really weird thing to say. Because in
the question is I understand your contention. It's perfectly your contention. The question is, could it be measured? Like, even if you fall into the center of the black hole and you could never translate this information to anybody, could it be measured?
So so maybe the black hole is a bad example then. The region of space beyond the observable universe could never even in principle be measured.
Well, I understand that given locality and the speed of light and things like this. Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think we'll ever make it to Mom Z14, right? Or Capicolo, or whatever the paper that was published like 7 days ago of something Z shifted to 35. Like, yeah, of course, we'll never make it there. But if we somehow originated in, I don't know, Mom Z14, as opposed to the Milky Way galaxy, wouldn't we be capable of measuring that region, which is unobservable to us?
So now you're including in your definition of physical counterfactuals. Like, you know, if things were different, then we could measure it. And like, look, maybe this isn't worth.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Debating
no
over.
problem.
But like the point is like, you know, we can work with your definition of physical if you want. I'm just a little bit dubious or a little bit skeptical of it.
No problem. Yeah. Sure. Okay. I understand in debates, when people are having debate, they never secede a definition. They fight tooth and nail for that.
Well, look, I'm like, I've had this conversation with friends, and like generally the consensus amongst friends is like, yeah, we don't really know what a good definition of physical is, and we've like, it just doesn't seem like it ever really captures what we really want it to capture.
Sure, there's no necessary and sufficient definition of physicalism that has absolutely been like, you know, ubiquitously accepted. I accept that as well. For me, that's a rather pertinent definition, and while I understand the contention of not being actually able to measure it, you understand where I'm coming from. So anyway,
yeah, sure, we can use it.
So then my next question to you is
just real fast. There is 16 minutes left, and the topic is, does science prove God? And we've been going way off topic quite a bit, so let's try to. And remember,
apologies, it's my fault.
Oh well, I'm just saying Chad's the affirmative, so let's try to pull that back in. And
Yeah. Okay. So I know this is not immediately directing the topic, but I will. It's a pertinent question to where I'm going. Is it a proper account of the current understanding of physics, empirically verified, that it is only the case that classical objects collapse quantum objects, that no quantum systems collapse each other?
In the Copenhagen interpretation, yeah, that's the case.
Yes. Okay. And I stand with the Copenhagen interpretation. I understand there's a myriad of interpretations, and your position is that they're all equally as ungrounded. I think that there are all the propositions of the Copenhagen interpretation are grounded. It makes no extraordinary claims.
Oh, no, it's actually incoherent, right?
It's incoherent because of the measurement problem.
No, it's
correct?
like self-contradictory. No, it's circular. So the Copenhagen interpretation assumes the existence of classical things that cause collapse, but also recognizes that classical things are emerge from quantum things. And so there's no way to make sense of what the classical things actually are.
Correct, right. And so
it's incoherent. Like it's like aside from Bohmian mechanics, many worlds, the transactional interpretation, these are at least self-consistent. They might be far-fetched, but they're self-consistent. The Copenhagen interpretation is the one that is not consistent. It's not internally consistent.
I get you, right? In your paradigm, I understand how it's not consistent because it doesn't naturally emerge from initial principles. Like it's aurora borealis in the sense, or maybe I'm speaking with a snake is eating its own tail, where to have classical, you need quantum, but quantum objects themselves don't produce classical without the already existing classical object. So it's this conundrum.
It doesn't actually explain anything. It doesn't explain how collapse happens because it doesn't explain what causes collapse because it doesn't explain what classical things are.
And therein is with a collapse, right? The measurement problem in physics.
It's only a problem in the Copenhagen interpretation, to be clear.
Right. It's only a problem there, but the interpretation in this context is merely a really kind of backhanded, smuggled in thing where it's like, we can't exactly reconcile what is causing this phase change. Nothing seems.
Don't say it. It's not a phase change, by the way. I heard you use that language a lot with Peterson. It's not a phase change.
Okay, well, what is it then, if not a phase change?
Just call it a collapse.
Okay, no problem. What instantiates this collapse is unknown. We cannot have any subatomic particle, nothing that actualizes this, yet it seems to occur, right? And so I find that understanding to be incredibly consistent with the notion that of potency and act as being fundamental, and the fact that even in a loose interpretation, which one I take, is written in Genesis. And in Genesis 1:1, mind you, the statement that God created the heavens and the earth, these two things are diametrically opposed. And it explicitly tells the reader, even in a time so long ago, it explicitly outlines to the reader that the earth is formless. Darkness is over the surface of the deep. So to think that the earth, as being discussed here, is somehow a physical planet and that the heavens is, whatever that is to not literally read what is being explicitly told to the reader. And it find that if in an honest interpretation, the parallel therein is the assertion that there is some delineation that is non-physically emergent, and that who could decree the delineation of something immutable, infallible, and non-physically emergent? The only entity that could do such a thing is one that is equally non-emergent, non-causal, non-contingent, immutable, and infallible.
Sorry, what thing are you referring to that's that was like immutable and like infallible, whatever, with regards to collapse? Were you referring to? And I say this with as much respect as I can. I didn't understand any of that. It sounded completely disjointed to me. So like maybe rephrase it in like one or two sentences so then I can actually. What's the connection between What's the connection between the Copenhagen interpretation and Genesis 1:1 through 3? What's the connection?
Yeah, the Copenhagen interpretation is that there are two diametrically opposed states, classical and quantum, and that once more they cannot be understood as emergent from each other in any way. They necessitate each other to exist, and that the wave collapse occurs when they interact with each other.
And what does that have
is-
to do with Genesis 1:1 through 3?
Genesis asserts that the heavens and the earth are diametrically opposed to each other. They're distinct, the heavens and the earth. So it's like classical and quantum, like potency and act. When I read that and I reflect upon what we have acknowledged, measured, empirically tested, it seems to me in a very strong overlap.
So you know that literally no physicist thinks that there's like a genuine distinction between classical and quantum, right? The consensus view, like I would bet you like 95% or more would say that, yeah, everything's quantum. It's just sometimes things behave classically because there's a lot of them.
Except people who subscribe to the Copenhagen interpretation.
No, even
correct?
Copenhagen interpretation would say that. They say, yeah, we don't know how the measurement thing happened. The Copenhagen interpretation is literally just shut up and calculate. Just don't worry about what's doing it. Don't worry about what's causing it. We just know how to make predictions based off of measurements. There's literally the people who subscribe to the Copenhagen interpretation just don't think about why any of this is happening at all. There's like, yeah, this is just the thing that happens. But yeah, of course, everything is made. Of course, everything is fundamentally quantum. That is ubiquitous. That is the ubiquitous view.
All right. And while there's a natural silence, we did get another question here.
Oh no, not ChatGPT.
We did get another question here. Nobody on Fire was asking, is the argument for God in the room with us, Chad?
No problem, but
there was
out
one
for
more
change.
one more super chat question. Is the argument for God in the room with us, Chad?
Well, man, I'd be repeating myself like again, right? I'm trying to be genuine about this, and I'm not trying to be like fallacious with the way I'm trying to present what I believe. But at the same time, I constantly have to reiterate the fact that it's difficult for me to expound on that if we cannot agree on the properties, the ontologically necessary properties of God. And furthermore, if we can ground that and we accept the line of reasoning I've tried to use insofar as justifying that God is necessarily non-causal, then the line of argumentation follows that science and physics as we know it invokes this, and it invokes this in properties that from which these fundamental models emerge. There's no further explanation given. Yeah, that's it.
And I will repeat again, just to make this point, that just because God has one property, it doesn't mean that all things that have that property is God.
Yeah, but when that property is unique to this, and first and foremost, importantly, to understand that if we are to reference historicity, if we are to reference, what people mean in the theist framework, that is absolutely a necessary property of God, and God solely, nothing else, right?
Right.
Nothing else in the theist framework has that property at all. Not an angel.
But there are other things in a broader philosophical framework that can have that property, right?
Wonderful. But you are talking again to a theist who is of the Abrahamic school of thought. So if to talk to me about God as it is understood in the Abrahamic school of thought, not as it is perhaps colloquially used by Vikings some time ago, if you're talking to me, you're invoking that property, and the only entity that possesses that property is God.
Then
so
you're
when
just defining
then you
it
turn
into existence.
I'm not defining it into existence. I'm telling you that this is an ontological necessity from any worldview, no matter how you spin it.
You did it. You did the thing. It's not from any worldview. It's only from your worldview.
No.
You said just a minute ago, from the theist worldview, it's absolutely the case that the only thing that's non-causal and eternal is God. But
that part.
Plenty of other worldviews.
That part. Correct. That part is correct. That in the theist worldview, that's the only case. But I'm saying to you, every worldview every worldview invokes something non-causal.
So when you say non-causal,
You-
you just mean that it's not caused by something, right?
Yeah, it's
Because
not
non-causal
contingent,
typically
not
means
emergent.
So non-causal typically means it doesn't interact with causation.
Well, this
Which
is
you don't
why
wanna say that.
I use quite a few terms for this, because it's I
You just
find
want to say
that
like
you
it's
run
not
into
caused, right?
well, it's what I'm trying to allude to is the ontology, not the semantics. I'm trying to say that there's an ontological state of affairs wherein which we semantically call it possibly non-causal, possibly non-contingent, possibly non-derivative. These are all synonyms for the ontology that I'm trying to elucidate.
Yeah, you're just trying to do like a modal ontological argument, right? You're just trying to say like, look, this is the necessary thing. But like, if I point to some other necessary thing, and it's not the thing that you believe in, then it seems like we're stuck.
Yeah, and that's again just a conflict, a problem of semantics, right? As if like if you point to something
this is a real
else,
problem with the argument, right?
it's a problem. It's a semantic problem. Once again, it's
No,
like if you point to something else that has this property that you call a different word, then you have a big problem.
Well, no, but it
I'm
doesn't
saying,
share the properties with the thing that you're referring to. For example, the thing
Does
that you're
it sh-
referring to necessarily has a mind, right?
where have I invoked that?
I mean, God is a agent, right?
I believe him to be, yeah, but where in my argument did I invoke he has a mind?
Hold on. So you're saying that you
I
could
didn't.
be, and hold on, I just really got to clarify here. You're saying that it would be possible to believe in God, even if you don't think God has a mind. You'd still be, or sorry, you could believe in something that doesn't have a mind, and it'd still make sense to say that you believe in God.
I would ask you the very pertinent question: what do you mean by mind? Like with that which you and I possess?
No, just something with a will, perhaps desires, or
What are desires?
thoughts,
Like
knowledge, beliefs.
desires and thoughts like we have?
Not necessarily like we have, just
So then
simpliciter.
what do you mean? What do you mean by these words? Because you're like invoking, does it have it? And then I ask you, what do
these
you
are like
mean
primitives.
by
If
that
you don't know what I mean by a mind, like by a mind, then like I can't help you. Like this is just the thing that like philosophers talk about.
You absolutely can.
Not
You
really.
can do what I tried to do and elucidate for me.
But wait, sorry, are you telling me that you don't
understand?
understand what a mind is?
Well, I'm asking you, like a mind like you and our mind?
No, not like
what are we
ours.
talking-
Just a mind simpliciter.
And
just
what
like
is a mind simpliciter?
So I mean, like, because our minds are like, finite, and we can have one thought at a time. But like, you could imagine that there's a mind that's not finite, and you could imagine that there's a mind that can have multiple thoughts. But like, generally, I would say that a mind is something that a conscious agent has. I would say that, and you could say like, well, what is a conscious agent? Well, you could say that an agent is something that has experience or has the ability to have experience. Like there's a whole bunch of ways we could talk around this, but like,
and the ability to have is the ability, and is the ability. Well, brother, I could have done that an hour and a half ago when I said either you know what I'm talking about or you don't. I wouldn't have to flesh out my idea of God's ontologically necessary properties. I could have just did the same thing to you, right? But I attempted.
I mean, but look, are you being honest with me that you don't know what I mean by like a non-human mind? Like, are you being honest with me about that?
I'm being
because like you believe in
serious.
One, right? You believe in one.
I'm being absolutely serious. I'm asking you what is in this context is like this agent would be, since it's non-causal, it would be atemporal. Causality is temporality. So it's atemporal. What does it mean to have an atemporal experience? What is that?
That's a really good question. That's a great question.
1 minute.
Yeah. And that's my point to you. You're like, you're asking.
No, but that's a great question. What does it mean for an atemporal thing to do anything? You're right. It's a great question. How can an atemporal being create the universe?
Yeah, that's why it's understood that God is pure act. And what you're invoking is there's potency. You're invoking that there's some potential that is unrealized.
I'm invoking that it's a mind, that it has a mind, which is what you believe, by the way.
And what is a mind?
That's a
fail
really
to,
good. It's a really good question. It doesn't make
to
sense in your worldview.
Yeah, to you, because I'm not asserting that, am I?
You don't
You're
think that God has a mind?
You are boxing a straw man. I'm asking you, what is that?
Chad, do you think that God has a mind?
What
Whatever you
is
think of
that?
mind, whatever you think of when I say mind, do you think that God has it?
God is pure act.
Okay, so God doesn't have a mind.
What do you mean by mind?
Does God have a will?
What is that?
You don't know what.
Yeah, what is that? You're like asking me these questions, and like if I were to ask you these questions, right? Like I'm playing your game now. You don't like it so much, right? When
That
every
is
single,
time, but y'all can finish this point.
yeah,
We're a
whenever
little bit
you
loose with time on in the mega bloodbaths.
So, for example, right, no problem. When I said to you, like, do you accept the PSR? Well, what is the PSR? Well, I have my own version of the PSR, and the PSR, you have
I
no
didn't
problem.
fail to understand what you meant.
Have
I just wanted
no
clarity.
problem doing that whatsoever. No problem.
To be clear, do you
But
not understand
when
what
the
I mean?
same retort, do you not understand when I said what the PSR is? We had to have a
I
30-minute
did.
conversation
We
about
literally
it.
pulled up the PSR and we agreed on what it meant.
So can we do the same thing for a mind? No, we can't,
If
because
you want.
you're unwilling
Do you
to
want to do that? Like we can do that, but we're out of time.
Yes, exactly. So listen, man, I think we could potentially next time when I have my camera, you have your camera, we can continue this conversation if you're willing to do this, right? I will be an honest interlocutor. I'm not someone who's trying to be fallacious on purpose, right? And I'm a person who's open to changing my mind. I'm not like, there was truly a time in my life 10 years ago where I was an atheist. I was somebody who was like hard on all this stuff. So I've evolved to where I am today. It could also possibly be the case that maybe through some grand discussion or internal reflection, I shift off that opinion. So it's not something I'm immutably steadfast to, even though I find myself to be in that current position. But I can understand that there could be a set of propositions, etc., that could, etc., change my mind. So if you're willing to have a further discussion, we can. But I find that my line of questioning, insofar as asking, what is consciousness? What is a mind? What do you mean by experience? Is not fallacious. It's the exact same thing you've been doing to me.
Never said it was fallacious.
Right. And so I would like for you to expound on that before I can give you an answer as to whether or not these
you
properties...
want a definition of what a mind is? I mean, like, if you want a definition of what a mind is, it depends on like what your view on, philosophy of mind is. Like, this is like a whole field of philosophy. But like, you believe in a God with a will. So like, you know what I mean when I'm talking about it, because I'm referring to your beliefs. So like, it just seems dishonest to say, oh, I don't know what that is. Can you define? Like, you believe in it. So whatever you believe, whatever you believe it's mean.
Yeah, I believe in my sense, I just understand that to be all encompassing of pure act.
A will is all encompassing of pure act?
Yes, that there's no delineation between, crudely speaking, because I don't have any time to expound on this, but when you speak of mind, consciousness, will, this is pure act. God, all of these are encompassed in the notion of pure act. And pure act
I don't know what any of that means, and
we can talk about it another time about physics. Maybe we could have just a discussion of like Copenhagen.
Are y'all done with the topic?
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's an open panel after. Y'all can hammer this out after. I'm going to go ahead and read the super chat comments real fast. So let me get that pulled up. There were actually quite a few. And I am so grateful for all the support, all the likes, everybody in both streams. Make sure you guys are slamming the like button if you haven't hit it yet. We're going to read through these comments. Hopefully these comments give you all some ammo to use in the closings, and then we'll move into the closings. Those will be 8 minutes. I do appreciate y'all both being here for the mega bloodbath. So hopefully y'all are having fun. I thought this was great so far. Cody H said, you don't come up and debate someone solely on the physics and then get to know someone who knows physics and change topics. It's not an attack. Vincent Vekis said, science proves God using the 3 laws of logic and logical consistency. Something always comes from something. It's never been a case to the contrary. Something cannot exist from nothing. So if the universe is 13 billion years old, something came before it. God. Blitz Karen Dave said Blitz has answered the question about the PSR at least 4 times by my count. I don't understand why Chad won't accept his answer. And then Vincent, once again, side note, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, so the universe has a beginning. something came before it. And if y'all want to jump in on any of these with a quick comment or something, feel free.
Oh
to
yeah.
just don't go super
Interestingly
far
enough,
into it.
it doesn't necessarily follow that something came before the universe if it's 13.8 billion years old. You can have a non-temporal state that pre-exists in some sense. I say pre-exists loosely. Pre-exists the universe as we know it. And in that sense, it's not before anything. So, yeah, there would be no before the first moment of time. In fact, that's kind of by definition.
Gotcha. And Roland said, can we keep Jay Pesnick from licking himself while here in chat? Nobody on fire said, there is no impasse. You're floundering, present the argument, or concede. And then Austin Sims, I can't prove God because I can't even define it. Seems like an absolute concession, my dude. Welcome to atheism. I'm going to add brother. Now you don't have to define it, bro. Carla J. Strand for Taco's continuous protection of Chad's mic in our ears.
Yeah, my bad about that, guys. Sorry if it's been like a problem. Not intentional.
Back up a foot.
Even now? God damn,
Yeah,
bro. What
yeah.
the hell?
Vincent, if it exists, it's physical. Existence is a common link to explain all physical things. Ian Maston, Chad, I share faith, but cramming the ineffable into creation fails. Logic, vocab, science. Some facts may fit theism, but that's not science. You're getting ripped apart by these super chats, mostly, Chad.
Isn't that what I signed up for, bro? I mean, like, to be frank, this is a very atheist-centric space.
My audience is like 40-60 or 60-40 atheist-theist or something like that, just so you know.
Not in my lived experience, brother, but okay.
Atheists, I think, are just much more generous than theists usually. And Ayers Eve, after listening to Chad last week, I badly wanted him to talk to Blitz. I am so happy. We're all very grateful Blitz joined us today.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, so I had watched the debate before I agreed to this. I think, or maybe I watched it right after you asked, Taco. And honestly, the reason why I did is because there was just a lot of bad physics happening. Like, Peterson didn't know a lot, and then Chad was saying a lot of stuff that was not true. So I just think that we just need more people that, like, people should talk about physics if they know about physics, and otherwise they should not.
Well, give me an example of something that I said is just like fundamentally not
You
true
said
about
that
physics.
gravity is constant even in the early universe. It's not. You said that these electromagnetic forces and so on, and like the various forces don't actually change as you get closer and closer to the early universe.
Can I interrupt you just right there for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
I cannot imagine a world within which I would say such a thing because
I have a quote.
Perhaps maybe it's out of place because I holistically don't believe in a gravitational constant. I
So,
literally don't believe in a gravitational constant.
So you said, and I quote, "They do change." No, or sorry, Peterson said they do change, and then he said, "No, the scaling of the spacetime you're dealing with changes, and therefore their effects on that scalar spacetime is merging together. It's not that the force in the way it interacts changes. It's just that the dominion of spacetime you're dealing with gets so small that the delineation between the forces can't be gauged. It's kind of like, let me put it like this to you, right? Gravity doesn't change. It's just that if you get small enough, the effect of gravity is superseded by the strong, weak, and electromagnetic forces. And effectively, gravity isn't a force on that dominion on that scale. That doesn't mean gravity has changed. It's still constant. That's false. That's strictly false.
We were talking in the context of what we test today.
You were talking about the early universe unification. Peterson brought up Electroweak unification, about how electromagnetism gives way to electromagnetism, the weak nuclear force. When you wind the clock back, go back to the electroweak force, and you're saying, oh no, that's not what happens. They stay the same. They're just indistinguishable at that scale.
Well, I get where you're coming from. My position on this is still the fact that I don't believe in a gravitational constant. Sincerely, I'm leaning more so into modified Newtonian dynamics. And
so you said that doesn't mean gravity has changed. It's still constant. What are you referring to when you say it's still constant?
That there's a force of gravity.
That there's a force of gravity?
Yes.
So to be clear, would you say that there's an electromagnetic force is constant as well?
Well, as it has, and again, once to my understanding, once you reduce down Planck space, right, the ability to delineate between the nuclear forces, electromagnetism, etc., that ability disintegrates. That to me doesn't imply that the force itself is null and void. The force is still valid. It's just that the scale at which you are attempting to have this force have an effect produces nothing.
No,
Not
so
that
that's
the
a
force-
mistake, right? So it is the case that above the Electroweak scale, electromagnetism doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist.
And do you have
The weak
experimental
nuclear force
evidence
doesn't
for
exist.
this?
Yes, this is done at the Large Hadron Collider all the time.
And so
We
it
probe the
doesn't
Electroweak scale. It's
exist
kind of like what we do.
in what sense does it not exist?
There is no electromagnetic force. Photons they are not well defined. There are no photons,
Okay.
right?
Right. And does that mean that the scale of space-time and perhaps the temperature constraints of this are inducing this, or that the force itself evaporates?
The point is that forces, the fundamental forces, the three quantum ones and then gravity, these change as a function of the scale, right? So if you go to smaller scales, the nature of the forces changes in such a way that above the Electroweak scale, the forces themselves evaporate. They become the electromagnetic
they're
force, the weak
just
nuclear force
not
become the same
measurable.
thing. No, it's
They're
not that
just
they're not
not
measurable.
measurable.
No, it's not that they're not measurable. They become the same thing.
Yes, in not being able to be measured.
No, they're both. They just don't exist as separate entities anymore. They're not
because
separate
you
forces.
can't measure them as separate entities due to the
it's
scaling of
the
space-time.
mathematics. The mathematics is that they are one indistinguishable thing. The Electroweak force. There's four bosons. There are no photons anymore. Photons photons only exist below the Electroweak scale.
Are you not therefore conflating the territory and the map? You're saying that the map indicates it doesn't exist.
We can measure this.
But you can't measure it because at that state of affairs, it becomes indistinguishable. And therefore, you can't measure it. And because you can't measure it, your map, the mathematics, indicates to you it evaporates. That does not mean that the territory actually doesn't exist now.
So to be clear, you're basing your assertion that, they still exist, you just can't tell them apart based off of your intuition because you don't know how you don't know how Electroweak symmetry breaking works. You don't know how the running of the coupling constant works. And I get that. But the point is you made an assertion. I'm telling you, as somebody who has studied in this field, it is incorrect.
And is the running of the coupling the map?
That's something that's observable. In fact,
that's called the map. This is
the territory.
Map and the territory.
No, the running of the coupling is the territory. This is an observable, measurable
thing.
Oh,
brother. Okay.
The mathematics that describes the running of the coupling constants, that might be the map.
Yeah, that's the map. And what does that map tell you? That this goes away. And therefore you're conflating the conclusion of the map with the territory.
So does the electromagnetic, does the fine structure constant and the fine structure constant for the weak nuclear force, do these two things join at the Electroweak scale or not?
I believe so. Yeah, on the map and the mathematics, right?
No. This is a thing that actually happens, right?
Oh, because it's mapped as such, right? And explained as such.
Wait, do you think that like coupling constants don't exist? Do you think that I thought you thought that numbers exist? Do you think that numbers don't exist?
I believe that there. To be quite frank with you, I wanted to expound on that a little bit. I believe relationships exist. Numbers
okay,
like
yeah.
1, 2,
that's
3,
what
5.
coupling constants are. They are relationships.
Yeah.
They tell you how
Yeah, but I don't believe these
interact.
relationships are physical. That's the difference, right? You're arguing that
I'm
these
not saying they're
relationships-
physical. I'm saying that they're real.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're physically real, and therefore they're not even physically tested.
So then, why do you think that? Why do you think that electromagnetism is physically real?
Because electromagnetism, we experience it on an everyday function. It is here, and we have a map. We have
How
a
do you
map.
experience it?
Well, empirically, we have a map that defines electromagnetism. Now, could it be the case?
You experience flashes of light in your eyes, but you don't experience electromagnetism. Let me get this
straight, right? Could there be a case within which our understanding of electromagnetism is incomplete?
Probably not. No.
So we have a sufficient and necessary, absolutely complete understanding of electromagnetism.
Yeah, I actually don't think that there are any questions that are unanswered given our current understanding of electromagnetism. I could think about it. I mean, like there are definitely questions in the standard model, but electromagnetism is the thing that we understand the best. And I actually don't think that there are any things that we don't understand about it, and that shows an incompleteness.
I mean, am I crazy for saying that plasma interactions are heavily influenced by electromagnetic?
Sure, but you were asking about electromagnetism, not stuff that emerges from
Yeah,
electromagnetic
and don't we
interactions.
have like a literal approximation of how plasma interacts? Because like to literally deal with it, literally,
you're conflating like plasma dynamics with electromagnetism. Like
well,
electromagnetism describes or is kind of like the fundamental principle of plasma dynamics, but that doesn't mean that if we don't understand plasma dynamics, that we don't understand electromagnetism. This is it's similar to affirming the consequent like you did before.
I just think that the assertion that we have a complete infallible understanding of electromagnetism and there couldn't be something revealed to us in the future, and that you are actually claiming this, that we have
I think it's plausible, yeah.
all model.
Well, for electromagnetism, yeah, I think it's plausible. Now the question is
we can disagree on that. I don't think so.
But I mean, like, look, the point is that like it seems like you're just not familiar with running of the coupling constants. You're not familiar with Electroweak unification, and that's fine. You don't have to be, but you talked as if you were like this paragon of physics knowledge, and like just from somebody who you definitely talked as if you were.
Well, maybe if you want to lean into that, that's fine. Before we even discussed this, I told you that insofar as the physics, the operations, and mathematics, I cede the floor to you. I don't.
I mean, even the concepts, like even the concepts.
I am very familiar with the concepts, as I have attempted to elucidate.
Apparently not. You're not familiar with the running. Okay. You weren't familiar with the running of the coupling constants. You weren't familiar with Electroweak symmetry breaking. Like these were things that you didn't know about a week ago. Maybe you know about them now, but
no, I know about them. I've been aware of them. Well, my headphone died. Give me a second. I'm plugging it in again. God damn it. Hold on.
All right. Well, while he's doing that, I'm gonna read the other ones. Sorry, that comment had me dying. This was one for you, Dr. Blitz. And it's a comment. You don't have to address it if you don't want to. But mind is one of the most controversial things to define in philosophy. Dr. Blitz is ignorant of phenomenology.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree that mind is super complicated because it depends on how you interpret what a mind is. However, there is a sense in which we have an intuition as to what kinds of things are included in what a mind is. Like we usually think of a mind includes like a will. It includes thoughts, perhaps. It includes beliefs. It includes these kinds of things. We kind of expect that these are the kinds of things that show up in mind. And then there's a whole, and look, I completely grant that the philosophy of mind is a very, very vast field. But if you're asking, like, if you believe in this thing, which, you know, Chad does, Chad believes that God has a will, God has agency, right? Then like whatever he's referring to when I said mind, that's what I wanted to talk about. If he wanted a fixed definition, which I don't, like, it just depends on what your philosophy of mind is, I guess. Anyway.
Iyer Zeev says, I will be an honest interlocutor. Quoting Chad, yeah, press X to doubt. And then it's tearing him apart. And then Professor Hizzle says, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us this evening. I appreciate you both. It was a great discussion. And I agree.
Shouts out. Thank you to that. And to the people that like to shoot me down, dude. I'm welcome, dude. I understand perhaps my propositions may come off abrasive to some people. No problem with that, man. That's what we're here for, is to investigate each other's ideas, right? And so at the same time, not to like steer it all back, like I understand your position about the coupling of the constants and etc. Like obviously I cede the floor to your expertise in the actual mathematical operations therein. The proposition I'm holding, and all I want to finish on saying, is I believe you're making a map and territory fallacy. That's it. And you can disagree with that.
Okay. Well, you can bring that into the conclusion. If
sure,
you want,
no problem. Yeah, my headphones just died, so I kind of wanted to get that out.
All right. So, Chad, you are going to be doing the first closing statement, and then we'll have Dr. Blitz. You'll have 8 minutes. Now, I have put a poll up on YouTube, or I'm putting it up right now. It's up now, for who is tonight's master debater. I ask you to hold your vote back until the conclusions are done. But if you already have one in mind, you can vote. But I would say hold it until the closing statements are completed. But we'll announce the master debater for this evening at the end of this. Chad, let me know when you're ready, and I will start your timer.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you have 8 minutes starting now.
Yeah. All right. Well, my formal conclusion is one I'm going to have to spitball and freeball. First and foremost, thanks to Dr. Blitz for being here. And I genuinely think the content you're making, insofar as expounding on physics, is incredibly informative, and you should continue to pursue this. I think you'll have great success with this. Insofar as the conversation we had here now, I think we kind of ran into the age-old pitfall of semantics. And what do you mean by when you say X? And you have brought such contentions to me, and inversely, I have retorted the same contentions to you. And we haven't seemingly made much progress into the scientific domain, which I would like to do, because I genuinely am far more interested in that than I am with proving perhaps my belief, and perhaps even a personal belief that I hold. Insofar as this conversation holistically, and what I'd like to point out is, when I speak, my core goal is to speak in ontology, the nature of what something is, not how we define it. And I find that there's a very strong asymmetry with the people I've just had these conversations with, where in which one side of the aisle seems to very concretely try to push the narrative of the necessity of being, and another pushes the necessity of how you define that being. And I find that that is a pretty vivid illustration of the conversation we had. My belief, once more, in God is that to prove God, both people in the conversation must agree on what it is that they're trying to prove. I have proposed a positive claim as to what this necessary property is. I don't think we've made too much progress in seceding to that, what I believe to be ontologically necessary definition. And for that reason, we haven't made much progress into discussing the underpinnings of where in physics, empirically, we may find such things. Insofar as whether or not I proved my claim, I find that it's a bit of a dubious proposition if you truly investigate it. By what do people mean by prove, and what do you even accept they prove to be? Personally, it's proven to me, and I'm attempting to elucidate that to the audience, but obviously these are very dense topics that sometimes sound very circular and don't seem to yield much progress. I would also like to remind the audience and everyone, even the person I'm speaking with, that we ought to remain within the domain of that which is testable, repeatable. And whenever we investigate that domain, we always presuppose and invoke something at the base of each assumption that is non-causal, non-contingent, non-derivative, any of these synonyms that represent the ontology of something unbegotten, perhaps. And insofar as the necessity and the absolute necessity of invoking this property, and that property, as I assert, being the necessary symmetry break that God possesses, distinct from anything else, when they invoke this property, they invoke the core property of God, and the property solely derelict to God. Dr. Blitz would tell you that there are other things that could be non-causal, non-contingent. But at that point in time, we would be entering into a metaphysical discussion, which we spun our tires on, as to why this property cannot be equivocated to other terms. Whenever you start attributing that there's a myriad of things that possess this property, you begin to equivocate on this term, and this term ceases to have any value. And to keep it meaningful and to keep the symmetry break true and the words that we use to represent actual being, I find that this symmetry break is necessary. And once more, this symmetry break is invoked in physics, in science, as the bedrock upon which science is built. And then to turn around and say, does science prove this? Well, of course, from my point of view, it essentially proves this infallibly, as it is the foundation upon which it is built. It is be equivocally, in my opinion, silly to say to someone living in a house, prove to me the basement exists. Well, you're in a house that is founded on a basement. So seems kind of obvious. But insofar as discussing principles of physics, I really, really would have liked to have gotten to Nobel Prize in 2022 about Bell's theorem. I would have really liked to get into the validity behind the measurement problem and why alternative explanations like many worlds is not sound and genuinely a bit of a sleight of hand. I would have really liked to have gotten across to the fundamental assumptions of certain properties in different models that are non-emergent, non-derivative, and non-deductive. They're just asserted as being. And these properties are, in many cases, diametrically opposed. What gives rise to this and how this proposition is identical to the philosophical framework outlined in Potency and Act, and I dare even say outlined in Genesis 1, where it explicitly says God's first act was to delineate the heavens from the earth, something that we as people on the earth experience practically as diametrically opposed, such that if we walk into the horizon, the heavens and the earth never intersect. They're forever separated. And I would have liked to expound it on how that is what they meant, and how it's very interesting that the Spirit of God is hovering over the waters with an S, and that quantum field theory purports that fields are the actual fundamental fabric of reality, and that fields, in many cases, can be understood and directly mapped onto the proposition of waters, and how the next statement therein is that God's created light spoken into existence, and the preponderance of the immaculate work produced by Einstein, which proved that the fundamental bedrock of the universe is energy, and that which we experience of energy is the electromagnetic spectrum, and that would be a photon, aka visible light.
And that is time.
And let me just say one last thing, Taco. Sorry. Yeah. So that is it in a nutshell. Obviously, it's impossible for me to expound on it in one conversation, but I appreciate you guys for listening. Appreciate you coming out for Taco's thing, and hopefully we can keep this going, and maybe you guys can make fun of me next time. Thank you, Dr. Blitz, and everyone here.
Thank you for the wonderful closing statement. And then Dr. Blitz, let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your 8-minute timer. Also, don't forget, people, there is a vote up still. It's got 73 votes already. So that's interesting. But feel free to keep voting on that. We got a little bit of time left. You ready?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm starting your timer now. You got 8 minutes.
Yeah. So I figure I'll address the main argument, and then we can talk about what Chad here said. So I actually provided a syllogism at the very beginning of the in my introduction. Sorry. I provided a syllogism in the introduction of my introduction, and I expected an attempted rebuttal at any of the premises, and absolutely none were offered. Now, he kind of alluded to trying to say, oh, well, with this definition of God, it works. But he didn't really say that. I mean, I think he kind of tried to imply that it works. But the point is the rebuttal was, or the syllogism was never addressed. And so, if we grant the premises, then the conclusion follows. Now, what it seems like happened in this debate, and I guess I wasn't anticipating this, is that both Chad and I were confused, or rather we disagreed with we understood the prompt differently. I understood the prompt God or science proves God as the method of science empirically demonstrates the existence of God. And my syllogism was addressed towards that. What it seems like Chad has understood the prompt to mean is that the existence of science itself proves that God exists. And, that's an understandable conflation. Like, we both understood this in different ways. However, I think that the former is probably what was expected. But even if we grant the latter, Chad's argument amounted to, what is it? I have it here. Science proves, or science works. The fact that science works is necessitated by some God existing, therefore God exists. However, that is merely begging the question, right? It is merely the assertion that it is a God that is the foundation that underlies and allows for the existence of, or for the ability of science to work. This is not a demonstration. This is begging the question. So, I mean, if the argument were an empirical argument, then we could have talked about the science. We could have talked about the empirics. That wasn't the argument you wanted to make. You wanted to avoid empirics because I think that we probably agree you can't empirically prove that God exists. Rather, Chad had to rely on philosophical, well, I don't want to say anything mean, on philosophy, which just doesn't seem like it was in the spirit of the prompt. Anyway, this is all to say, I think that I don't think that the debate really went where anybody wanted it to. But let's actually talk about the science. So, Chad said that he wanted to talk about, the Nobel Prize, the measurement problem, fundamental assumptions of certain properties in different models that are non-emergent, non-derivative, and non-deductive. They're diametrically opposed, all these things. But it seems like that this is like kind of confused. I mean, like, we could talk about all of these things. It's not super necessary. But what I'm trying to assert is that I don't think that any of these statements are going to get you to a God. Now, what you can do from science is you can try to build a metaphysics that respects the underlying physics. And that's what I suggest everybody do. If you're trying to build a coherent metaphysics, it better align with the physics. And that's fine. But then you're still not doing empirics, right? You're still trying to build metaphysics that's consistent with physics. That doesn't prove that your metaphysics are correct. Now, just to address a few specific things, Chad brought up that somehow this difference between an uncollapsed and a collapsed wave function is identical to potency and act, like this kind of act potency philosophical framework. I should point out that no physicist uses this kind of framework. It's like 2,000 years out of date. It's just not really relevant to the empirics of physics that we do today. It's it's Aristotelian, if you will. Then there's the statement about quantum fields being like the waters. Quantum fields are nothing like water. I guess the only similarity that they have is that they can both have waves, but the nature of the waves are fundamentally distinct. Water isn't even a field, so they're unrelated. There's also a statement about how God spoke light into existence, but funnily enough, electromagnetism didn't exist in the very, very early universe. So it seems like if God spoke light into existence, then he got the physics wrong of the early universe. He got the order wrong. And then there's the statement that Einstein proved the fundamental bedrock of the universe is energy. This is merely a category error. Energy is not a substance. Energy is a property of substances. So unless you think that the only things that exist are properties and you're a bundle theorist, which I guess you could be, then to make the statement that energy is fundamental to the universe is mistaken. It also follows, by the way, that energy is not conserved in an expanding universe. It also follows, by the way, that energy is not even defined in a non-static or a non-stationary universe. This is essentially pop science drivel that's being repeated as if it's fact. Anyway, so I think what's probably been evidenced here is that we didn't really talk a lot about physics, and when we did, Chad wasn't as familiar as he thought he was with the physics. He granted as much that I definitely know more about the stuff than he does, which I respect, and I respect the humility there. But don't try to use physics to prove your point, then, in any other debate. Don't try to bash. Anyway, I'm rambling. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry, Taco.
No, these were great conclusions. Are you ceding, or closing statements? Are you ceding the rest of your time?
Yeah, I'm done.
Gotcha. Perfect. So we have quite a few votes on the, and there are a couple more super chats, which I'll cover in a second. But we have 87 votes, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. That's a good chunk of the listeners, right? With that being said, tonight's master debater is Dr. Blitz with 90% of the vote. Chad
Don't tell my
got,
wife.
Chad Satis got 10% of the vote.